In 1962, road workers near Thessaloniki were digging a new highway. Their shovels hit something unexpected, a bronze container. Inside was a rolled papyrus, burned black but still readable. This was the Davini Papyrus, the oldest book in Europe, and it was all about what happens when we die. The ancient Greeks had an answer to that question, a detailed answer. They knew exactly where souls went after death. They knew the names of the rivers, the ferrymen who carried them across, the judges who decided their fate, the guard dog at the gates. For 1,500 years, from 1600 BCE to around 500 CE, this wasn't mythology to them. This was real as the ground beneath their feet. Think about that for a moment. Every Greek farmer, every soldier, every mother and child, they all knew precisely what would happen after their last breath. They buried their dead with coins for the ferryman. They performed specific rituals to ensure safe passage. They initiated themselves into mystery religions that promised better destinations. The strange thing is, no two ancient sources tell exactly the same story. But that's what makes it fascinating. Before the Greeks gave death a name and a face, before they called him Hades, there was something else, something older. The year is 1600 BCE. The place is Mycenae, a hilltop fortress in southern Greece. A king has died. His people lower him into a deep shaft cut straight down into the bedrock. They place a gold mask over his face, not just any mask, one that captures every line, every feature, as if they're trying to preserve not just his body but his identity, his soul. This is 300 years before Homer, before any written Greek myths we know. But already these Bronze Age Greeks are creating doorways to another world. The shaft graves at Mycenae tell us something important. These people believed death wasn't an ending, it was a transformation. The dead needed their faces, they needed their swords. They needed their golden cups. Why? Because they were going somewhere they'd need these things. Heinrich Schliemann found these graves in 1876. He was looking for Homer's heroes. What he found was older, much older, 16 royal burials, men, women and children covered in gold, 30 pounds of gold in one grave alone. But here's what matters. Every single body was positioned to face the same direction, east, toward the sunrise, toward rebirth. The Mycenaeans didn't write much down, at least not about death. We have their Linear B tablets, thousands of them, lists of sheep, inventories of bronze, names of gods. They mention Poseidon, they mention Zeus, they mention someone called Dionysos, probably Dionysus, but Hades, the Lord of the Dead, he's not there, not yet. Instead, they had something different. At Pylos, another Mycenaean palace, archaeologists found something strange in the 1950s. Tablets mentioning offerings to the thirsty ones. The dead were thirsty. They needed liquid, wine, water, blood. This makes sense when you see their tombs. Not the shaft graves. Those were for royalty. Regular Mycenaeans built something else. Tholos tombs. Imagine a beehive made of stone buried under a mound of earth. You enter through a long corridor called a dromos. The walls get higher as you walk. The ceiling presses down. By the time you reach the burial chamber, you're deep underground, in the earth, but not trapped there, because here's the brilliant part. These tombs had tubes. Actual ceramic tubes built into the structure. They ran from the surface down to the burial chamber. The family could pour offerings through these tubes. Wine for grandfather, oil for grandmother. The dead could drink, they could feast. They were down there, but they weren't gone. Then something happened. Around 1200 BCE, the palaces burned. All of them. Mycenae, Pylos, Tiryns, Thebes. Within 50 years, the entire civilization collapsed. We still don't know exactly why. Invaders, earthquake, economic collapse, civil war, maybe all of these at once. What we do know is that everything changed. The way Greeks lived, the way they fought, and especially the way they buried their dead. The grand Tholos tombs stopped being built. The gold masks disappeared. Instead, Greeks started burning their dead. Cremation, Fire. Complete transformation of the body into ash and smoke. This is new. This is different. And it tells us their ideas about death were changing too. But they didn't forget the old ways entirely. In the darkness after the collapse in what we call the Greek Dark Ages, something interesting happened. People started visiting the old Mycenaean tombs, not to rob them, to worship at them. At Menide, near Athens, people in 800 BCE were leaving pottery at a tomb built in 1400 BCE. 600 years after the original burial. They didn't know who was buried there. They couldn't read Linear B anymore, but they knew it was someone important, someone powerful, someone who might help them from beyond death. These became the hero cults. All across Greece, communities adopted ancient tombs. They created stories about who was buried there. Ajax at Salamis, Pelops at Olympia, Agamemnon at Mycenae. They poured libations through the old tubes. They sacrificed animals. They asked for protection, for good harvests, for victory in war. This is where our story really begins. In this gap between the old world and the new, the Mycenaean kings were gone. Their palaces were ruins. But death was still there, still hungry, still thirsty, still waiting. The Greeks needed new answers. Who ruled the dead now that the old kings were gone? Where did souls go? What happened to heroes, to criminals, to ordinary people who were neither? They found their answers in the most unexpected places, in caves, hundreds of them, scattered across Greece. Limestone caves that seemed to breathe, that exhaled cold air in summer and warm air in winter, that dripped water constantly like tears, that went down, down, down into perfect darkness. The cave at Eleusis, the cave at Taenarum, the cave at Lebedea. Each one became a doorway, not metaphorically, literally. These were the places where the living world touched the world below, where brave men could descend, where desperate wives could search for lost husbands, where the curious could learn what waited for us all. But the Greeks weren't the only ones thinking about death. Across the Mediterranean, other civilizations had their own answers. The Egyptians with their mummies and pyramids, the Phoenicians with their ancestor worship, the Hittites with their elaborate funeral games. As trade resumed after the Dark Ages, these ideas started mixing. Greek merchants in Egypt saw the weighing of hearts. Greek soldiers in Anatolia heard stories of underground gods. Greek colonists in Italy found local tribes who buried their dead in fetal positions ready for rebirth. All of these influences were stirring together, waiting for someone to make sense of them, to create a coherent vision, a map of the afterlife that everyone could understand, that someone was about to appear. A blind poet, they said, from Ionia, on the coast of modern Turkey. His name was Homer, and he was about to give the underworld its first clear geography, its first named inhabitants, its first terrible beauty. But Homer didn't invent these ideas. He inherited them, from the Mycenaeans with their golden masks, from the Dark Age Greeks with their hero cults, from the cave sanctuaries where people had been meeting the dead for centuries. He took all of these fragments, these half-remembered traditions, these local beliefs, and wove them into something new, something that would last forever. The proto-underworld was ending, the age of Hades was about to begin. Homer changed everything, not gradually, not over centuries. In one book, one story, one journey, he gave the Greeks their first complete picture of what happened after death. The story goes like this. Odysseus needs to get home. He's been trying for 10 years. The war at Troy is over, but the gods keep blocking his path. The witch Circe tells him something that stops him cold. To get home, you must first visit the dead. You must speak to the prophet Tiresias. The problem, Tiresias is already dead. So Odysseus does what no living Greek has done before. He sails to the edge of the world, past the pillars that hold up the sky, past the floating island of Aeolus, to a place where the sun never shines, where mist covers everything, where the river ocean meets the entrance to the underworld. Think about what Homer is doing here. He's not putting the underworld below ground, not in a cave. He's putting it at the world's edge, beyond the boundaries of normal geography. You can sail there. but you can't map it. You can visit, but you can't stay. Odysseus beaches his black ship on a shore covered in poplars and willows, Persephone's grove. Already Homer is telling us something. This is her place, not Hades. The queen matters here as much as the king, maybe more. Then comes the ritual. This is precise, specific. First, dig a pit, a cubit wide in each direction. Pour libations around it, honey mixed with milk, then wine, then water. Sprinkle white barley over everything. Promise the dead that when you get home to Ithaca, you'll sacrifice your best heifer. Promise Tiresias personally that you'll give him your best black ram. Now the blood. This is the key. The dead need blood to speak. Odysseus slaughters a black ram and a black ewe. He lets their blood flow into the pit, and then they come. The dead rise up from Erebus. That's what Homer calls it. Erebus, the darkness under the world. Young brides who died before their weddings, unmarried men, old people who lived full lives, warriors still carrying their bloody spears. They crowd around the pit, thousands of them, making a sound Homer describes as eerie shrieking. Odysseus panics. He draws his sword. He has to keep them back from the blood until Tiresias arrives. But the first ghost he sees isn't some stranger. It's Elpenor, his own crew member, the youngest, the one who got drunk the night before and fell off Circe's roof. He's been dead for less than a day. This is brilliant storytelling. But it's also theology. Homer is saying the soul leaves immediately. No waiting period. No gradual transition. Death is instant and irreversible. Elpenor is already fully in the underworld, even though his body is still lying unburied on Circe's island. Elpenor begs for proper burial. Without it, he warns, he'll become a curse on Odysseus. The unburied dead are dangerous, they're angry, they can't rest. This isn't just Greek belief. Every culture in the Mediterranean world agreed on this. The dead need proper rites. Next comes Odysseus's mother, Anticlea. He didn't even know she was dead. She died of grief, waiting for him to come home. He tries to hug her. 3 times he reaches out. 3 times she slips through his arms like a shadow, like smoke, like a dream. This moment would haunt Greek literature for 1,000 years. The dead have form but no substance. They recognize us but can't touch us. They remember love but can't feel warmth. They're themselves but not themselves. Finally, Tiresias arrives. He drinks the black blood and suddenly he's fully present, fully aware. He tells Odysseus his future, the journey home, the suitors in his palace, his eventual death, which will come from the sea. But then Tiresias says something strange. What follows is a parade of the famous dead. Agamemnon murdered by his wife, Achilles, the greatest warrior who ever lived, Ajax still refusing to speak to Odysseus because of an old insult. Each one drinks the blood, each one tells their story, and through their stories Homer builds his vision of death. Here's what's revolutionary about Homer's Underworld. There's no judgment, no punishment, no reward. Good people and bad people end up in the same place. Heroes and cowards, kings and slaves. They're all shades, shadows, living a diminished existence in a grey world. Achilles says it best. Odysseus tries to comfort him. You're still famous, he says, still powerful. You rule among the dead. Achilles' response shocked ancient readers. I'd rather be a slave to the poorest farmer on earth than king of all the dead. This is completely different from what the Mycenaeans believed, different from what the Egyptians taught, different from what later Greeks would believe. Homer's dead aren't preparing for rebirth. They're not being judged. They're not moving on to something better. They're just there, forever, remembering life but unable to live. Homer does mention a few exceptions. Far in the distance, Odysseus sees Minos, the ancient king of Crete, judging the dead. But judging what? Homer doesn't say. He sees Orion hunting ghostly animals, Tityos being tortured by vultures for assaulting a goddess, Tantalus reaching for fruit and water that always slip away, Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill. But these are special cases. Criminals who personally offended the gods, Everyone else just wanders the asphodel meadows, a place Homer barely describes. Grey fields of grey flowers where grey shades drift forever. There's one more thing Homer establishes, the geography. He mentions rivers but doesn't name them all. He mentions the house of Hades and Persephone but doesn't describe it. He creates the framework but leaves the details vague, almost like he's inviting future poets to fill in the blanks, which is exactly what they did. Within a generation, another poet named Hesiod was adding details. The river Styx that the gods swear by, the ferryman who carries souls across, the guard dog at the gates. Each poet who came after Homer added something, expanded something, explained something, but they all accepted Homer's basic blueprint. The underworld exists. It's a physical place. The dead go there immediately. They retain their personalities and memories. They can communicate with the living under special circumstances. And most importantly, death is the great equalizer. Rich or poor, good or evil, everyone ends up as shadows. This last point would bother Greek thinkers for centuries. It didn't seem fair. Why should heroes and villains share the same fate? Why should virtue go unrewarded? Why should evil go unpunished? The mystery religions would offer one answer. Philosophy would offer another. But for now, in Homer's time, the Greeks had something they'd never had before. A shared vision of death. A common story. When someone died, everyone knew where they went, what happened to them, what they became. And perhaps most importantly, Homer showed that the living could visit the dead. Not easily, not safely, but it was possible. The boundary between life and death wasn't absolute. There were doorways, rituals, ways to speak across the divide. This would become an obsession for the Greeks. If Odysseus could speak to the dead, why couldn't others? If the dead retained their memories, could they predict the future? Could they reveal hidden knowledge? Could they be bargained with? Homer had given them the blueprint. Now they would spend the next 1,000 years exploring every room in the house of Hades, mapping every river, naming every guardian, creating the most detailed geography of death the world had ever seen. But first, they needed to understand the architecture, the actual structure of the underworld, the rivers that divided it, the regions that comprised it, the beings that ruled it. Homer had shown them the entrance. Now they would map the interior. The Greeks did something no other civilization had attempted. They mapped the unmappable. They gave death geography. Start with the rivers. 5 of them. Each one with its own name, its own meaning, its own terrible purpose. The Greeks didn't just say the river of the underworld. They said Styx, Acheron, Lethe, Phlegethon, Cocytus. Each name meant something. Each river did something to the souls who crossed it. The Styx came first, the river of hatred, but also the river of oaths. When the gods wanted to swear an unbreakable vow, they swore by the Styx. Break that oath, and even Zeus would face consequences. The water was supposed to be poisonous, so toxic that it could dissolve any vessel except a horse's hoof. Alexander the Great, some said, was poisoned with Styx water. It killed him in Babylon at age 32. But here's what's interesting. The Styx was real, is real. You can visit it today in the mountains of Arcadia, a waterfall that drops down a limestone cliff near the village of Solos. The water has high levels of toxic minerals. It actually can dissolve metal. Ancient Greeks knew this place. They saw this deadly water disappearing into the earth. Where else could it go but the underworld? Next came Acheron, the river of woe. This one was real too. It flows through the Sprotia in northwestern Greece. In winter it floods. In summer it nearly dries up. But at one point it does something strange. It disappears underground for several miles, then resurfaces. The Greeks saw this. A river that literally went under the earth and came back. That had to be significant. Near where the Acheron meets the sea, there was a place called the Necromanteon, the Oracle of the Dead. Archaeologists found it in 1958. A complete underground complex. Tunnels, chambers, mechanical devices for creating special effects, windlasses that could make things fly, speaking tubes that could throw voices, hallucinogenic seeds stored in jars. This wasn't mythology. This was a functioning business. People paid good money to speak with their dead relatives. Then there was Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Drink from it, and you forgot your entire life, your name, your family, everything you ever were. Most souls drank from it eventually. They had to. How else could you spend eternity remembering what you'd lost? But some souls were told to avoid it. The initiates of the mystery religions, they were given secret instructions. When you reach the underworld, they were told you'll see 2 springs, one on the left by a white cypress tree. That's Lethe. Don't drink from it. Go to the right instead. Find the spring of mnemosyne, memory. Drink from that one. Remember who you are. We know these instructions because we've found them, written on gold tablets, buried with the dead, 43 of them so far from graves all over the Greek world, Italy, Crete, Macedonia, Thessaly, all saying variations of the same thing. I am a child of earth and starry heaven. I am parched with thirst. Give me water from the spring of memory. Phlegethon was different. The river of fire, liquid flame that burned but didn't consume. Later writers would place it in the deepest parts of the underworld, the punishment zones. But earlier sources suggest something else, that it provided light in the darkness, the only light, a burning river illuminating a world without sun or stars. Last came Cocytus, the river of lamentation, fed by the tears of the dead, always growing, never diminishing, because the dead never stop weeping. These weren't separate rivers, they were connected. Cocytus flowed into Acheron. Phlegethon and Cocytus met at a great rock. Styx was sometimes a river, sometimes a marsh, sometimes a waterfall. The geography shifted depending on who was telling the story. But the rivers were always there, always 5, always flowing. Now to cross these rivers you needed help. This is where Charon comes in, the ferryman, an old man with a raggedy beard dressed in a dirty cloak poling a creaky boat. He wasn't a god, he wasn't a demon, he was just the ferryman, doing his job forever. But he required payment. 1 a bowl, sometimes 2, a small silver coin. That's why Greeks buried their dead with coins in their mouths, or on their eyes, or in their hands. The placement varied by region, but the practice was universal. We found thousands of these coins, literally thousands, in graves from Spain to the Black Sea. What happened if you couldn't pay? You waited. 100 years, some sources say, standing on the shore, watching others cross, neither alive nor properly dead, stuck in between. This terrified the Greeks. That's why even the poorest families found a way to provide coin for the dead. That's why charity burials included the fair. Nobody wanted their loved ones stranded on the wrong side of the river. Once you crossed, you met Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, though dog doesn't really capture it. He had a mane of snakes, a serpent for a tail, breath that could kill. He let everyone in. That was his job, but he let no one out, ever, except for heroes, of course. Heracles wrestled him into submission. Orpheus charmed him with music. The Sibyl of Cumae drugged him with honey cakes. But for normal dead people, Cerberus was the final boundary, the absolute proof that death was permanent. Beyond Cerberus lay the judgment area. 3 judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. All of them had been kings in life. Minos of Crete, Rhadamanthus of Boeotia, Aeacus of Aegina. All of them were sons of Zeus. All of them were famous for their justice. But here's the thing. In Homer, only Minos is judging, and we don't know what he's judging. By the classical period, all 3 are working. Aeacus judges the Europeans. Rhadamanthus judges the Asians. Minos has the deciding vote in difficult cases. They decided where you went, and there were options. More than you might think. Most people went to the Asphodel Meadows. Not a punishment, not a reward, just existence. Grey flowers stretching forever. The souls there retained their personalities but had no purpose. They wandered, they remembered, they gradually forgot as they sipped from Lethe. It wasn't torture, it wasn't paradise, It was just eternal nothing. If you were evil, truly evil, you went to Tartarus. This wasn't just underground. It was under the underworld, as far below Hades as heaven is above earth. Hesiod says an bronze anvil would fall for 9 days before hitting bottom. Tartarus was a prison. The Titans were locked there after Zeus defeated them. Monsters were caged there. The worst human criminals were tortured there. But not many humans qualified. You had to personally offend the gods. Murder your children and serve them for dinner. Rape a goddess. Betray divine hospitality. Garden variety murderers didn't go to Tartarus. They went to the Asphodel Meadows like everyone else. If you were exceptional, heroic, beloved by the gods, you might reach Elysium, or even better, the Isles of the Blessed. These were paradise, eternal spring, feasting, music, sport, everything the Greeks loved about life forever. But the requirements kept changing. Homer says Menelaus will go there, but only because he's married to Helen, Zeus's daughter. Later sources say you need to be chosen by the gods, or be a great hero, or live 3 virtuous lives in a row. The mystery religions promised their initiates would go there. Philosophers argued about who deserved it. The palace of Hades and Persephone stood at the centre of all this. Every source agrees it existed. None agree what it looked like. Bronze walls, iron gates, adamantine thresholds, dark halls, echoing chambers, a throne room where the king and queen sat in state. Persephone is crucial here. She's not just Hades' wife, she's the dread queen, the one who decides things. When heroes visit, they appeal to her, not him. When mystery religions promise salvation, they invoke her name. She spends half the year above ground with her mother Demeter, half below with her husband. She knows both worlds. She bridges life and death. Around the palace were other structures, stables for Hades' black horses, kennels for Cerberus, gardens of pomegranate trees. Yes, gardens. Even the underworld had gardens, dark plants that grew without sunlight, asphodel, pomegranates, black poplars, white cypresses, plants that marked boundaries between worlds. There were roads down there, paths. 3 main ones, according to Virgil. One to the judgment seat, one to Tartarus, one to Elysium. But also countless smaller paths. Ways to get lost. Ways to wander forever if you didn't know where you were going. And throughout all of this, the dead existed in a specific form. They were shadows, shades. The Greek word is eidolon, an image, a reflection. They looked like themselves but had no substance, no weight, no warmth. They could speak, but their voices were like bat squeaks unless they drank blood. They could think, but their thoughts were fuzzy unless refreshed by offerings from the living. This is the architecture the Greeks built over centuries, each poet adding details, each region contributing local traditions, each mystery religion promising secret knowledge about the true arrangement. Was it real to them? Absolutely. Greeks planned their whole lives around this geography. They joined mystery religions to get better accommodations. They buried their dead with maps and passwords. They performed monthly offerings to keep their ancestors comfortable. They built shrines at cave entrances. They told stories about heroes who'd visited and returned. The architecture of death wasn't just mythology. It was a living belief system that shaped everything. How Greeks faced death. How they mourned. How they remembered. How they hoped. And at the centre of it all was a story. The story of a girl picking flowers. A story that explained why the world works the way it does. Why summer becomes winter. Why the dead stay dead. Why even gods must compromise with death. The story begins with flowers. A meadow full of them. Roses, crocuses, violets, irises, hyacinths, and one narcissus. The most beautiful flower anyone had ever seen. 100 blooms on a single stem. A fragrance so sweet it made the whole world smile. The sky, the earth, the salt sea waves. Persephone reached for it. Of course she did. She was young. Some sources say 14, others say older. But always young, always innocent. the daughter of Demeter, goddess of grain, out picking flowers with her friends, the daughters of ocean, in a meadow near Nysa. Though which Nysa, there were cities called Nysa all over the Greek world. Each one claimed to be the place, the actual place where everything changed. The moment Persephone touched that narcissus, the earth split open. Not a small crack, a chasm, wide enough for a chariot, deep enough to reach the underworld. And through that chasm came Hades himself, the invisible one, the wealthy one, the host of many. He had many names because Greeks were afraid to say his real one. He grabbed Persephone. She screamed, a scream so loud that her mother heard it from miles away. But by then it was too late. The chariot was already descending. The earth was already closing. The flowers were already scattering. In seconds, it was like nothing had happened. Just an empty meadow, silent except for the echo of a girl's cry. This wasn't a random abduction. Zeus had arranged it. His brother Hades wanted a wife, had wanted one for eons. But what goddess would choose to live underground? None. So Zeus gave him permission to take Persephone, his own daughter, without telling her mother. Demeter knew something was wrong immediately. She flew to the meadow, found nothing. No daughter, no witnesses, even the daughters of ocean had vanished. For 9 days Demeter searched. She didn't eat. She didn't drink. She didn't bathe. She carried burning torches through the nights. She asked everyone. Gods, mortals, nymphs, rivers. No one would tell her what happened. They all knew, but they were afraid of Zeus. Finally, on the 10th day, Hecate spoke up. The goddess of crossroads, of magic, of liminal spaces. She had heard the scream. She hadn't seen who took Persephone, but she'd heard the girl cry out. Together Hecate and Demeter went to Helios, the sun god. He sees everything. He had to know. Helios told them the truth. Hades took her. Zeus approved it. She's queen of the underworld now. You should be happy, he said. It's a good marriage. Hades is a powerful god. Your daughter is a queen. Demeter's grief turned to rage, a rage that would destroy the world if necessary. She abandoned Olympus, disguised herself as an old woman, a mortal, wandered to Eleusis, a town near Athens, sat by a well. The Maiden Well, they called it later. Sat there in black robes like a refugee, like someone who had lost everything. The daughters of King Gelius found her there. They were coming for water. They asked who she was. Demeter lied, said her name was Doso, said she'd been kidnapped by pirates, escaped, needed work. Could she be a nurse for their baby brother? They brought her home. Queen Metanira hired her immediately. There was something about this old woman, something powerful, something safe. She gave her the baby prince, Demophon, to raise. Demeter tried to make the baby immortal. Every night she held him in the fire, burning away his mortality bit by bit. She didn't tell anyone. It was her secret, her project. If she couldn't have her daughter back, at least she could make this child divine. But Metanira caught her, saw her baby in the flames, screamed. Demeter dropped her disguise, revealed herself in all her terrible glory. The whole palace filled with light. "You fools," she said, "I would have made your son deathless. Now he'll die like everyone else." But she gave them something else instead. Instructions. "Build me a temple, here, above the Maiden Well. I'll teach you mysteries, rituals, ways to earn a better afterlife, ways to not fear death." They built it immediately, the temple at Eleusis, and Demeter sat inside it, alone, furious, refusing to let anything grow. This is where the story becomes terrifying, because Demeter controlled grain, wheat, barley, the stuff that kept humans alive, and she stopped it all. No seeds sprouted, no crops grew. The earth became barren, hard as bronze. This went on for a year. A full year, humans started dying. First the old, then the sick, then the children. The healthy adults held on, but they were weakening. And here's the detail that shows how the Greeks thought about their gods. Zeus didn't care about the human deaths. He cared that dying humans couldn't make sacrifices. The gods were losing their offerings, their honours, their smoke from the altars. Zeus sent Iris, the rainbow messenger, to convince Demeter to relent. She refused. He sent all the gods, one by one, each with gifts, promises, honours. Demeter refused them all. No crops until I see my daughter. Finally, Zeus had no choice. He sent Hermes to the underworld, told him to bring Persephone back, but also, quietly, told him something else. Make sure she's not entirely free. Hermes found Hades and Persephone sitting together on a couch in their dark palace. Persephone was miserable, wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink, just sat there longing for her mother, for sunlight, for the world above. When Hermes announced Zeus's command, Persephone jumped up with joy. Finally, freedom, home, mother. But Hades smiled. A strange smile. Of course, he said. Go to your mother, but know that being my queen is no small thing. You rule half of everything that exists. Every human who has ever lived or ever will live becomes your subject. That's more souls than there are stars. Then, secretly, he gave her something. Pomegranate seeds. Just a few. Some sources say 3, others say 4, or 6, or 7. The number varies, but the result is the same. She ate them. Why? Was she tricked? Was she hungry? Was she perhaps not entirely unwilling to maintain a connection to her dark kingdom? The ancient sources disagree. Hades gave her his golden chariot. Hermes drove. They rose through the earth near Eleusis, right by Demeter's new temple. The reunion was everything you'd expect. Mother and daughter embracing, crying, laughing, holding each other like they'd never let go. But then Demeter asked the crucial question, did you eat anything in the underworld? Persephone had to tell the truth. The pomegranate seeds, that little food, that tiny taste of the underworld, it bound her. Anyone who eats the food of the dead must stay with the dead. That's the rule, older than the gods themselves. Demeter's rage returned. She would keep the earth barren forever. Let humans die. Let gods starve. Let the cosmos collapse. Her daughter had been tricked, trapped, bound to darkness by a handful of seeds. This is when Rhea intervened, the mother of Zeus, Hades, and Demeter, the grandmother. She proposed a compromise. Persephone would spend part of the year underground. 1/3, some sources say, others say half, the months when she ate the seeds. The rest of the year she'd live above with her mother. Everyone agreed. What choice did they have? Demeter let the grain grow again. Humans survived. But now, every year, when Persephone descends to her dark throne, her mother grieves. The earth turns cold, plants die, winter comes, and when Persephone returns, her mother rejoices, spring arrives, life returns. The cycle continues. But here's what makes this story brilliant. It's not just about seasons. It's about death itself. Persephone becomes the link between worlds. She's the only one who truly belongs to both. Gods visit the underworld but don't stay. Dead souls stay but can't leave. Only Persephone moves freely between life and death. That's why the mystery religions focused on her. Not Hades, not even Demeter, Persephone. She knew the secret. She'd experienced death and returned. She could guide souls, protect them, ensure they received better treatment. The initiated called her Core, the maiden, or Despoina, the mistress, or Sotera, the saviour. At Eleusis, where Demeter established her mysteries, initiates reenacted the whole story. The abduction, the search, the reunion, the compromise. But they added secret elements, things we still don't fully understand. A special drink called Kykeon, visions in the dark, a bright light, something that removed the fear of death completely. Cicero, the Roman politician, was initiated at Eleusis. He wrote that it taught how to live in joy and how to die with better hope. Plutarch said initiates knew death is not an evil, but a good. The playwright Sophocles wrote, "Thrice blessed are those mortals who have seen these rites before going to Hades. Only they have life there. For the rest, all is misery." What did they see? What did they learn? The penalty for revealing the mysteries was death, and people took it seriously. In 415 BCE, the aristocrat Alcibiades was accused of mocking the mysteries at a drinking party. He had to flee Athens, his property was confiscated, his name was cursed. But we have hints, art that shows Persephone holding torches, leading a young boy from darkness, inscriptions that say she brings light to the darkness. The promise that initiates would not drink from Lethe, would not forget, would remain themselves in death. The story spread beyond Eleusis. Every Greek city had its own version. In Sicily, they said the abduction happened at Lake Pergusa, in Crete, near Mount Ida, in Arcadia, by the river Styx. The Spartans claimed it happened in their territory. The Argives said it was theirs. Each local version added details. In some, Persephone goes willingly, in others she fights. Sometimes Aphrodite creates the Narcissus to help Zeus's plan. Sometimes Gaia, the earth herself, makes it grow. In one version, Persephone is picking flowers for Athena's robe. In another, she's gathering them for her own wedding, not knowing she's about to have one. The Romans would later call her Proserpina. They'd add their own interpretations. But the core story never changed. A mother loses her daughter to death, fights to get her back, partially succeeds, and in that partial success creates the rhythm of the world, summer and winter, planting and harvest, life and death. It's a story about grief that becomes a story about acceptance, about a mother who learns she must share her daughter with darkness, about a daughter who becomes queen of two realms, about death not as ending but as transformation. For almost 2,000 years, people walked the same road, from Athens to Eleusis, 14 miles, every September, thousands of them, rich and poor, citizens and slaves, men and women, Greeks and foreigners, all seeking the same thing, the promise of a better death. The Eleusinian Mysteries were the best-kept secret in the ancient world, and they kept it perfectly. From 1500 BCE to 392 CE, millions of people were initiated. Not one of them revealed what happened inside the Telesterion, the great hall of initiation. We have fragments, hints, clues, but the complete truth died when the Christians closed the sanctuary. Let's start with what we know for certain, the public parts, the parts that weren't secret. Every year in early fall, the sacred objects were brought from Eleusis to Athens. What objects? We don't know. They were kept in sealed baskets called kistai. Only the priests could touch them. They were carried by priestesses called kanephoroi, young women from the best families, walking barefoot, in complete silence. The objects were stored in the Eleusinian, a small temple at the base of the Acropolis. Then came the announcement. The Hierophant, the high priest, would stand in the agora and declare the mysteries open, but not to everyone. You couldn't be a murderer. You couldn't have unclean hands. And you had to speak Greek. Not be Greek. Just speak Greek. Because you needed to understand the sacred words. The first day was called the gathering. Candidates came forward, paid their fees, 15 drachmas, about 2 weeks' wages for a labourer. Not cheap, but not impossible. The priests asked questions. Have you killed? Have you blasphemed? Are you pure? The candidates swore they were worthy. The second day, to the sea, every initiate had to purify themselves in salt water, but not alone. Each one brought a piglet, a small pig. They washed it in the sea along with themselves, then sacrificed it. Why pigs? Because pigs were sacred to Demeter, because they are intelligent animals, because their flesh is closest to human flesh. The real reason was probably part of the secret. Then came 2 days of rest, preparation, fasting, no wine, no beans, no pomegranates, especially no pomegranates, no fish, no eggs, no chicken. The diet was mostly bread and water, barley cakes, simple food, Demeter's grief food. On the 5th day the procession began, the sacred way, 14 miles from Athens to Eleusis. But they didn't just walk. This was theatre, performance, ritual. They carried branches called bakoi. They wore crowns of myrtle. They had saffron ribbons tied around their right hand and left leg. Why that specific arrangement? Another secret. They sang. Iacchus! Iacchus! A name for Dionysus. Or maybe Persephone's son. Or maybe someone else entirely. The ancient sources disagree. At a bridge over the Cephissus River, something strange happened. Men with covered faces hurled insults at the initiates, especially the rich and powerful ones. Crude jokes, sexual humour, mockery. This was part of the ritual, called Gepharismos, bridge jesting. Why? Because when Demeter was grieving, an old woman named Iambe made dirty jokes to make her laugh. The first laugh after losing her daughter. Humour in the face of death. The procession took all day, by design. They arrived at Eleusis after dark, exhausted, hungry, disoriented, ready for transformation. But first, more preparation. They drank the kykeon, the special drink, barley, water, and something else. Pennyroyal, the texts say, a type of mint. But modern scholars suspect there was more. Ergot, perhaps, a fungus that grows on barley, contains compounds similar to LSD, would explain the visions people reported, the bright light, the sense of revelation. Albert Hofmann, the chemist who discovered LSD, studied the kykeon in the 1970s. He thought it definitely contained psychedelics. Others disagree, say the visions came from fasting, exhaustion, theatrical effects. We'll never know for sure. After drinking, they entered the telesterion, the hall of initiation. This wasn't a normal temple. Temples were houses for gods, small, exclusive. The telesterion was huge, could hold 3,000 people, had seats carved into the rock on all 4 sides, like a theatre. But the action happened in the centre, not on a stage. In the middle was the Anacteron, the Holy of Holies, a small stone building inside the larger hall. Only the Hierophant could enter it. From inside, at the climax of the ceremony, came a great light, so bright it could be seen from miles away. Plutarch says the initiates experienced wanderings and toilsome running about and journeys through the dark. Then suddenly, a wonderful light, and they found themselves in sacred meadows and dance grounds. What did they see? The ancient sources give us fragments. The ear of grain reaped in silence. That's from Hippolytus, a Christian writer attacking the pagans. A child, the noble child of Brimo, meaning Persephone. Maybe a real child, maybe a symbolic one. Fire, definitely fire. And at some point the Hierophant would shout, "The mistress has borne a sacred child, Brimos." There were 3 degrees of initiation. The Mistai, the first-timers. They watched, they experienced, they learned. But they couldn't come back the next year. They had to wait at least a year. Then they could return as apopte, the ones who have seen. They saw additional secrets, deeper mysteries, things even more carefully guarded. Some people went through a 3rd level, the highest. They became priests or priestesses, the Hierophant who revealed the sacred objects, the Daduchos who carried the torches, the Hierophantides, the priestesses who served Demeter and Persephone. These positions were hereditary, passed down through 2 families, the Eumolpidae and the Kerykes, for nearly 2,000 years. Famous people were initiated. Plato, definitely Plato. His philosophy is full of Eleusinian imagery, the soul trapped in the body like Persephone in Hades, the ascent to truth like the return to light. Cicero, Sophocles, Aeschylus, who actually got in trouble for almost revealing secrets in his plays, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, Hadrian, Augustus, but also regular people. We have inscriptions. Nicostrate, wife of Antiphanes, initiated. Lysander, son of Philon, saw the sacred things. Slaves could be initiated if their masters paid. Women participated equally with men. This was radical. Most Greek religious ceremonies separated genders. What did initiation promise? Not immediate paradise, Not resurrection, but something specific, a better portion in the underworld. The uninitiated would drink from Lethe and forget. The initiated would drink from Mnemosyne and remember. The uninitiated would wander the asphodel meadows. The initiated would feast in special regions. The uninitiated would exist as shadows. The initiated would retain their full consciousness. Pindar the poet put it this way: "Blessed is he who has seen these things before going beneath the earth. He knows life's end. He knows its God-given beginning. The mysteries influenced everything: art, philosophy, literature. You can see it in vase paintings. Before initiation, Persephone as victim, being dragged away. After initiation, Persephone as queen, majestically enthroned. Before, Hades as rapist. After, Hades as dignified ruler. The mysteries transformed fear into understanding. They also influenced other mystery religions. The Orphic mysteries borrowed Eleusinian elements, the mysteries of the great gods at Samothrace. The Dionysian mysteries, even early Christianity, the idea of death and rebirth, of sacred meals, of secret knowledge that saves, all have echoes of Eleusis. The sanctuary grew over centuries, started as a simple temple, became a complex. The Telesterion was rebuilt 4 times, each time bigger. The Romans added monumental gateways. The sacred way was paved, wells were dug, hostels built for pilgrims. Eleusis became the second most important religious site in Greece after Delphi. The mysteries survived everything. The Persian invasion. They burned the sanctuary in 480 BCE. It was rebuilt immediately. The Peloponnesian War. Sparta respected the sacred truce. The Roman conquest. Romans embraced the mysteries enthusiastically. Even the early Christian emperors left it alone. Constantine, the first Christian emperor, allowed it to continue. His sons too. But in 392 CE, the Emperor Theodosius ordered all pagan temples closed. The last hierophant was a man named Nestorius. He claimed descent from the original Eumolpidae family. When the sanctuary closed, he supposedly said, "The sacred light has gone out. Greece is no more." The Christians destroyed systematically, knocked down the statues, defaced the inscriptions, built a church on top of the Telesterion. But they couldn't destroy everything. The foundations remain. The sacred way is still there. You can walk it today. The well where Demeter sat still has water, and we keep finding new evidence. In 1997, archaeologists discovered a Roman-era relief showing parts of the initiation. In 2018, they found traces of ergot in pottery fragments from the site. Every year we understand a little more, but the central secret remains. What happened in that hall? What did 3,000 people experience together that changed their view of death forever? How did theatrical effects, chemistry, and religious faith combine to create transformation? We have one clue that might explain everything. Several ancient sources mention the same thing. At the climax, the initiates experienced a specific realization that Persephone and Demeter were the same, mother and daughter, life and death. The one who grieves and the one who is grieved for, the same. If that's true, if that was the revelation, then the mysteries taught something profound. That death and life aren't opposites. They're aspects of the same thing. That we mourn the dead while we ourselves are dying. That every mother becomes a daughter to death. That every separation is also a reunion. The Eleusinian Mysteries offered comfort through understanding. Not the promise that death isn't real, but the promise that death is part of a pattern, a cycle, something that can be comprehended, accepted, even embraced. That's why people walked those 14 miles for 2,000 years, not to escape death, but to understand it, to see it clearly, to lose their fear by gaining knowledge. Orpheus was different from other heroes. He didn't fight, he sang. His music could charm anything. Rivers would stop flowing to listen. Mountains would lean in to hear better. Wild animals would lie down peacefully. Trees would uproot themselves and follow him. Even stones would weep. This wasn't metaphor to the Greeks. This was fact. Music had power, real power, and Orpheus had more of it than anyone who ever lived. He was the son of Apollo, god of music, or maybe the son of Ergras, a king of Thrace. The stories vary. His mother was Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. He grew up in Thrace, in the north. A wild place, mountains and forests, not the civilized cities of southern Greece. This matters. Orpheus brought something foreign, something ecstatic, something that didn't quite fit with Olympic religion. The story everyone knows is about Eurydice, his wife, a tree nymph. On their wedding day, she was walking through a meadow. Aristaeus, a minor god, tried to assault her. She ran, stepped on a snake. It bit her ankle. She died instantly. But here's where Orpheus did something unprecedented. He didn't accept it. Heroes had visited the underworld before, Odysseus, Heracles, Theseus. But they went for other reasons, to complete quests, to seek prophecies, to capture monsters. Orpheus went for love, to get his wife back, to reverse death itself. He entered through the Taenarum cave in southern Greece, the same entrance Heracles used, but Heracles fought his way down. Orpheus sang. His first obstacle was Charon. The ferryman demanded payment. Orpheus played his lyre. Charon wept, tears streaming down his ancient face. He'd ferried millions of souls, never cried once. But Orpheus's music broke him. He took Orpheus across for free. Next came Cerberus, the three-headed dog. Orpheus played a lullaby. The monster that had never slept, that guarded constantly, lay down and closed all 6 eyes. Orpheus walked past unopposed. The dead gathered around him as he walked. Millions of shadows, all listening. The music reminded them of life, of love, of everything they'd lost. For a moment they almost felt alive again. The tormented souls in Tartarus stopped suffering. Tantalus forgot his hunger. Sisyphus sat on his rock. The Danaids rested by their jars. Even the Furies, the goddesses of vengeance, cried. Finally Orpheus reached the throne room. Hades and Persephone sat in state. Dark king and pale queen. Orpheus played. He sang. The words were simple. My wife died. I tried to bear it. I couldn't. Love was stronger. You know about love. Persephone was taken by love. Hades, you took her. Let that love that joined you move you now. Give me back Eurydice. Everyone will come to you eventually, he sang. We all belong to you in the end, but she came too soon, too young. Let her live out her years, then she'll return. You lose nothing. You gain gratitude. And if you refuse, I won't leave. I'll stay here. You'll have us both. Persephone wept openly. Hades, the pitiless one, the one who never grants requests, felt something he'd never felt. Mercy. Or maybe it wasn't mercy. Maybe it was respect. One artist to another. Because what was Hades but the ultimate artist? Death was his art. And here was Orpheus making art from death. King Art. They called for Eurydice. She came limping. The snake bite still fresh, still painful. Even in death, wounds remained. Hades spoke. You can take her. But there's a condition. You must walk in front. She'll follow. Don't look back. Not once. Not until you both reach the upper world. If you look back, she returns forever. Why that condition? The ancient sources offered different explanations. It was a test of faith. It was the law of the underworld. The living can't look at the dead. It was Hades' cruelty, knowing Orpheus would fail. Or maybe it was kindness, giving Orpheus someone to blame besides himself. The gods, not his own weakness. They walked, through the dark paths, past the rivers, past Cerberus, still sleeping, past Charon, still crying, up the steep tunnel toward light. Orpheus played as he walked, music to guide Eurydice, to reassure her, to reassure himself. He could hear her footsteps, at first. But as they climbed, the sound grew fainter. Was she falling behind? Was she fading? Was she even there? Had Hades tricked him? The tunnel seemed endless. The darkness absolute. No way to know how far they'd come. how far they had to go, and the silence behind him grew louder than any sound. Different sources place the moment differently. Some say he was still in the tunnel, others say he'd reached the exit, his feet in sunlight, hers still in shadow, but they all agree on what happened. He looked back. One glance, that's all. He saw her. She was there, real, following, reaching for him. Their eyes met. She said his name, or maybe she said farewell, or maybe she said nothing. She faded, like smoke, like a dream upon waking, back to the underworld, forever. Orpheus tried to follow, but Charon wouldn't take him. You can only enter once while living. Cerberus wouldn't let him pass. The way was barred. He sat by the entrance for 7 days. No food, no water, just playing his lyre, hoping. But she didn't come. The rest of Orpheus's story varies by source. He wandered the world, singing of loss, teaching mysteries. Some say he founded a religion, Orphism, a complete system of belief about souls and death and rebirth. Others say he just grieved until he died. His death was violent, torn apart by Maenads, female followers of Dionysus. Why did they kill him? Because he wouldn't sing happy songs anymore? Because he rejected all women after losing Eurydice? Because he taught mysteries that challenged traditional religion? The reasons multiply with each telling. But even death didn't silence him. His head, torn from his body, floated down the river Hebrus, still singing. It washed up on Lesbos, became an oracle, prophesying until Apollo, jealous of the attention, finally silenced it. His lyre became a constellation. His soul went to the underworld, to Eurydice, finally. But that's just the myth. The real importance of Orpheus was the religion that claimed him as founder, Orphism. It taught something revolutionary, that the soul was divine, trapped in the body as punishment, that death wasn't the end but a transition, that souls reincarnated lived multiple lives, until they achieved purification. The Orphics had their own creation myth. Dionysus was torn apart and eaten by Titans. Zeus destroyed the Titans with lightning. From their ashes, humans were created. So every human has two natures, Titanic, evil, physical, mortal, and Dionysian, good, spiritual, immortal. The goal was to purify the Dionysian and escape the Titanic. How? Through initiation, through vegetarianism, no eating creatures with souls, through purity, no violence, no oath-breaking, and through knowledge, secret knowledge, written in books attributed to Orpheus. We found these books, or fragments of them. The Daveni papyrus mentioned at the beginning. The gold tablets buried with initiates. They contain instructions, precise instructions for navigating the afterlife. You will find to the left of the house of Hades a spring, and standing by it a white cypress. Do not approach this spring, but you will find another from the lake of memory, cold water flowing. There are guardians before it. Say, I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is heavenly. You know this yourselves. I am parched with thirst and perishing. Give me quickly cold water from the lake of memory. And they themselves will give you to drink from the holy spring, and thereafter you shall reign with the other heroes. 43 of these tablets found so far, from all over the Greek world, southern Italy, Crete, Thessaly, Macedonia, all with variations of the same message. Avoid Lethe, drink from memory, declare your divine nature, join the blessed. The Orphics believed in judgment after death. Real judgment, not Homer's vague sorting, specific punishments for specific sins. They described tenfold punishment. Whatever evil you did in life, you suffered 10 times worse in death. Then you were reborn, given another chance, or another punishment depending on your next life. They also believed in a final escape. After 3 pure lives, or sometimes 10, the soul could escape reincarnation, join Persephone permanently, become divine again, return to its true nature. This influenced everything. Pythagoras adopted Orphic ideas. claimed he remembered his past lives, could recognize the shield he carried at Troy. Empedocles said he'd been a boy, a girl, a bush, a bird, and a mute fish in the sea. Plato's whole theory of the soul draws on Orphism. The body as prison, death as liberation, knowledge as salvation. But mainstream Greeks were suspicious. Orphics were different. They didn't sacrifice animals, didn't eat meat, carried books, which was weird for a religion, and they promised salvation to anyone, not just Greeks, not just the wealthy, anyone who followed their rules. There were charlatans too. Orphiotelestei, Orphic initiators who went door to door, selling purifications, promising to clear your family curse for a fee, claiming they could harm your enemies with magic. Plato mocked them, so did Aristophanes, but people kept buying what they sold. The hope of escaping judgment, of improving their afterlife odds. The real Orphics, the sincere ones, lived differently. Wore white wool, never wore leather. Avoided beans, they believed souls could be trapped in them. Avoided eggs, avoided public festivals, created their own communities, their own rules, their own relationship with death. They saw Orpheus's failure differently than others. He looked back not from weakness but from love, and that love transcended death. Yes, he lost Eurydice. But he also proved that love could enter Hades's realm, could move the unmovable god, could almost reverse death. The almost mattered as much as the failure, because Orphism wasn't about defeating death. It was about understanding it. Death as part of a cycle, punishment and purification, fall and redemption, the soul's journey home. Orpheus showed the way, not by succeeding, but by trying, by believing that music, art, love, knowledge could transform even death. The Orphic mysteries spread throughout the Greek world, to southern Italy, Sicily, the Black Sea. Wherever Greeks went, Orpheus followed. His songs, his story, his promise that death wasn't final, that souls could rise, that music could charm even the darkest powers. The Greeks invented something that haunts us still. Eternal punishment. Not just death, not just suffering, but suffering that never ends, that never lessens, that repeats forever with perfect, horrible precision. They gave this suffering faces, names, stories, Tantalus, Sisyphus, the Danaids, Ixion, Tityos, each one frozen in a moment of eternal agony, each one a lesson, a warning. This is what happens when you cross the line, when you offend the gods, when you break the fundamental rules. Start with Tantalus. He had everything. King of Lydia, rich beyond measure, son of Zeus himself, invited to dine with the gods on Olympus. Think about that. A mortal eating ambrosia, drinking nectar, listening to divine conversations. He was the most blessed human alive. But it wasn't enough. He wanted to test the gods, to prove they weren't all-knowing. So he invited them to dinner at his palace, and he served them his own son, Pelops, cut up, cooked, disguised as meat. The gods knew immediately, all except Demeter, still distracted by grief for Persephone. She ate a shoulder before realizing. The gods restored Pelops to life, gave him an ivory shoulder to replace what Demeter consumed. But Tantalus, his punishment was perfect, poetic, precise. He stands in a pool of water. When he bends to drink, it drains away. Above him hang fruit trees, apples, pears, pomegranates. When he reaches up, wind blows them out of reach. He's eternally hungry, eternally thirsty, surrounded by plenty he can never touch. But that's not the worst part. Above his head hangs a stone, massive, precarious, always about to fall, never falling, so he can't even focus on his hunger, his thirst. He's also eternally terrified, waiting for the crushing blow that never comes. The word tantalize comes from him. To offer something desirable but keep it just out of reach. We use his name every day, 3,000 years later. That's how deeply his punishment embedded itself in human consciousness. Then there's Sisyphus, king of Corinth, the cleverest mortal who ever lived. Too clever. When death came for him, Sisyphus tricked him. Chains, that's what he used. Convinced Thanatos to demonstrate how they worked, then locked him up. Think about what that means. Death himself chained in a basement in Corinth. Nobody could die. Anywhere. Warriors would get their heads chopped off and keep fighting. Old people would reach their final breath and just continue. The natural order broke. Ares, god of war, freed Thanatos. Sisyphus was dragged to the underworld, but he'd planned for this. Told his wife not to bury him, not to perform funeral rites. Then complained to Persephone. My wife dishonours me. Let me go back, just for 3 days. I'll teach her proper respect, then return. Persephone agreed. Sisyphus went home and stayed. Refused to return, lived to old age, died naturally, but the gods remembered. His punishment fit his crime perfectly. A boulder, massive. He must push it up a mountain, uses every muscle, every bit of strength, almost reaches the top, can see the summit. Then the boulder rolls back down. He must follow it, start again, forever. Camus wrote about him, called him the absurd hero, said we must imagine Sisyphus happy. But the Greeks didn't imagine him happy. They imagined him in perfect torment, always achieving, never achieving. The worst punishment for someone who thought he was cleverer than divine law. The Danaids were different. 50 sisters, daughters of Danos, forced to marry their 50 cousins, sons of Aegyptus. They didn't want to. Their father didn't want them to. Oracle said one of these cousins would kill him. So Danos gave his daughters wedding gifts. Daggers, hidden in their hair. On the wedding night, kill your husbands. 49 obeyed. Stabbed their new husbands in their sleep. Blood everywhere. Only Hypermnestra refused. She loved her husband, Lynceus. Spared him. The 49 who killed went to the underworld. Their punishment, filling water jars, forever. But the jars have holes. The water leaks out as fast as they pour it in. Eternal futility, eternal incompletion, never achieving the simple task of filling a jar. Why that punishment? Because they violated marriage. Sacred marriage. The thing that fills the house with children, with continuity. They made marriage empty, leaking, futile, so their punishment mirrors their crime. Ixion's crime was worse. He was a king, killed his father-in-law, pushed him into a pit of burning coals, first human to murder kin. Nobody would purify him. Blood guilt clung to him, drove him mad. Zeus took pity, invited him to Olympus, purified him personally. And how did Ixion repay this kindness? He tried to seduce Hera, Zeus's wife, the queen of heaven. Zeus tested him first, created a cloud shaped like Hera, Nephili. Ixion had sex with the cloud. From that union came the centaurs, half human, half horse monsters, living proof of Ixion's crime. His punishment, tied to a wheel, burning, spinning, through the air of Tartarus, forever. Sometimes the wheel has snakes, sometimes spikes, always fire, always motion, never rest. The first human murderer becoming eternal motion, eternal restlessness, eternal burning. Tityos was simpler, a giant, son of earth, tried to rape Leto, Apollo and Artemis's mother. They shot him full of arrows, sent him to Tartarus. His punishment stretched out over 9 acres. 2 vultures eat his liver, forever. It regenerates every night. They eat it again every day. Why the liver? Greeks thought the liver was the seat of passion, lust. Tityos let his lust control him, so his lust literally gets devoured, forever, regenerating just to be destroyed again. These are the famous ones, the ones everyone knew. But there were others. Ocnus, eternally pleating a rope that a donkey eats as fast as he makes it. The symbolism is debated. Maybe pointless labour. Maybe a nagging wife, represented by the donkey. Maybe just the futility of human effort. Phineas, blinded for revealing divine secrets. Harpies steal his food whenever he tries to eat. Salmoneus, pretended to be Zeus, threw torches to imitate lightning, made noise to imitate thunder, now lies in Tartarus while Zeus's real lightning strikes him, forever. What united them all? Hubris, going too far, thinking you're above divine law, natural law, human law. The Greeks had a word, ate, divine madness that makes you cross lines you shouldn't cross, that makes you think you're more than human. But here's what's interesting. These punishments weren't for normal people. You could murder someone and not end up like Tantalus. You could be clever and not end up like Sisyphus. These eternal punishments were reserved for those who personally offended gods, who broke cosmic order, who threatened the boundary between mortal and immortal. Regular criminals? They went to the Asphodel Meadows like everyone else. Maybe they had a harder time there, maybe they were shunned by other shades, but they weren't tortured forever. That was special, reserved, rare. The punished became celebrities in the underworld. Other dead souls could watch them, learn from them. Odysseus sees them during his visit. Aeneas sees them. They're always there, always suffering, always teaching the same lesson. Don't overreach. Know your place. Respect the gods. But the Greeks also found them fascinating. Painters loved depicting them. Poets returned to them constantly. Philosophers used them as examples. Why? Because they represented the human condition taken to extremes. We all reach for things we can't have, push boulders that roll back, try to fill containers that leak, feel consumed by our passions. The punished are us, but more so. Eternally more so. They show what happens when human nature meets divine justice, when temporary crimes meet eternal consequences, when mortals forget they're mortal. Later religions would expand this idea. Christianity's hell, Islam's Jahannam, Buddhism's Naraka, all have echoes of Tartarus, of eternal punishment for temporal crimes. But the Greeks invented it, gave it narrative form, made it specific, personal, named. The psychological brilliance was the repetition, not just pain, but the same pain, forever. Tantalus reaches for the same fruit. Sisyphus pushes the same boulder. The Danaids fill the same jars. Hope never dies completely. Maybe this time the fruit will stay. The boulder will balance. The jar will fill, but it never does. Never will. That's the true torture, not the labor. The hope. Modern psychologists have a term, Sisyphean task, something pointless and interminable, but that misses the Greek insight. Sisyphus's task isn't pointless. It's pointed, precisely pointed, at his specific crime, his specific nature, his specific failure. Each punishment is a mirror, showing the crime forever. Tantalus betrayed hospitality, so he's eternally denied it. Sisyphus escaped death, so he's eternally trapped by it. The Danaids emptied marriage of meaning, so they're eternally filling meaningless jars. Ixion violated divine kindness, so he's eternally burned by divine justice. This is what the Greeks understood. Punishment isn't just consequence, it's revelation. It shows who you really are, what you really did. Forever. No hiding, no forgetting, no moving on, just the eternal present of your worst moment. That's why these stories survived, why we still tell them. They're not just about ancient kings and mythical crimes. They're about the fear that our worst selves might be our true selves, that our crimes might define us forever, that somewhere, in some cosmic court, our punishments are being prepared, perfectly fitted, eternally repeated, never ending. Not everyone who entered the underworld stayed there. Some came back, heroes with divine blood, divine protection, divine missions. They walked into death's kingdom and walked out again, changed, marked, carrying knowledge the living shouldn't have. Heracles went first, or at least his was the first journey the Greeks talked about, his 12th labour, the final one, the impossible one, Bring back Cerberus, the three-headed dog, alive. King Eurystheus thought this would finally kill Heracles. How do you wrestle Death's guard dog? How do you drag it to the upper world? How do you even find it? But Heracles had advantages. He was Zeus's son. He'd already died once, technically. Been driven mad by Hera, killed his own children, gone through purification. He knew what guilt felt like, what blood debt meant. He prepared carefully, got initiated at Eleusis first, the only hero who did that before descending. Smart. The mysteries taught him the passwords, the paths, the proper way to approach the rulers of the dead. Then he went to Taenarum, the cave in the southern Peloponnese, the back door to Hades. On the way down he met Meleager's ghost, the young hero who died hunting the Caledonian boar. Meleager had a request: marry my sister Deianira, protect her. Heracles agreed. That promise would eventually kill him, Deianira's poisoned shirt. But he didn't know that yet. The dead can see the future, but they only tell you parts. He met Medusa's ghost too, drew his sword. Habit. Then remembered she was already dead. Can't kill a ghost. Hermes, his guide, laughed at him. Even Heracles could be foolish in the land of the dead. When he reached the palace, he didn't sneak, didn't trick. He asked permission, stood before Hades and Persephone and made his case. This is my labour, my obligation. Let me borrow your dog. I'll bring it back. Hades agreed, but with conditions, no weapons, resting only, and the dog comes back unharmed. Heracles agreed, found Cerberus by the gates, grabbed it around the throat, all three throats. The dog bit him, poisoned him. The snake tail struck. The snake mane hissed, but Heracles held on, squeezed, until Cerberus went limp, submitted. He carried the dog up to the light. The first sunlight Cerberus had ever seen. The dog vomited. From its foam grew wolfsbane, the poisonous plant. That's why wolfsbane is deadly. It came from Cerberus's mouth, from the underworld itself. Heracles showed the dog to Eurystheus. The king hid in a giant jar, terrified. Begged Heracles to take it back, which he did. Promise kept. Labour completed. Cerberus returned to his post. Still there today, metaphorically speaking, still guarding, still ensuring the dead stay dead. Theseus's journey was different, stupider. He and his friend Pirithous decided to marry daughters of Zeus. Theseus chose Helen. Yes, that Helen. But she was 12. Too young even for ancient Greek standards. They kidnapped her anyway, left her with Theseus's mother. Then Pirithous announced his choice, Persephone, the queen of the dead. Theseus tried to talk him out of it. That's insane. She's already married to the god of death. But Pirithous insisted, and Theseus had sworn an oath to help his friend no matter what. They entered through a different route, not Taenarum, through the Acheron Valley in Thesprotia, found the palace, walked right in, announced their intention. We've come for Persephone. Hades smiled, a terrible smile. Sit, he said, rest, eat. We'll discuss this. He gestured to stone chairs. They sat and couldn't get up. The chairs were the chairs of forgetfulness. They grew into the flesh, became part of the sitters. Theseus and Pirithous were trapped, part of the furniture, literally. They stayed there for years, maybe 4, maybe more. The stories vary, until Heracles came for Cerberus, saw his cousin Theseus stuck to a chair, tried to pull him free, grabbed his hands, pulled. The earth shook. Theseus came free, but part of his backside stayed on the chair. That's why, the Greeks joked, Athenians have such small buttocks. Their founding hero left his in Hades. Pirithous wasn't so lucky. When Heracles tried to free him, the earth shook more violently. Hades's message was clear. This one stays. He wanted my wife. He becomes my furniture. Pirithous is still there, still sitting, still part of the chair, forever. Aeneas's journey was more successful, more purposeful. The Trojan hero, son of Aphrodite, needed to reach Italy, found a new city, continue the Trojan line, but first he needed to see his father, Anchises, who died during their wanderings. The Sibyl of Cumae guided him, a priestess, ancient, prophetic, living in a cave near Naples. She knew the way, but warned him. Easy to go down. The gates are open day and night. Coming back, that's the work, that's the labour. First, he needed a golden bough, hidden in a forest, sacred to Persephone, without it no entry. The bough would only come free for the chosen one. Aeneas found it. It came away in his hand, first sign he was meant to make this journey. The Sibyl led him to Avernus, a lake in a volcanic crater. Birds flying over it dropped dead. The fumes. The entrance was there. They sacrificed black cattle, 4 of them, poured wine, honey, blood, then descended. Virgil, telling this story, gives us the most detailed map of the underworld ever written. The vestibule where abstract horrors live, grief, disease, old age, fear, hunger, poverty, death, sleep, war, all personified, all waiting by the entrance. Then the river crossing. Charon challenged them. You're alive. I can smell it. The Sibyl showed the golden bough. Charon went silent, ferried them across. Even Cerberus got drugged honey cakes, fell asleep. They passed the untimely dead. Infants, suicides, those killed by false accusations, those who died for love. Aeneas saw Dido there, his former lover, who'd killed herself when he left Carthage. He tried to speak to her, apologize. She turned away, silent, walked back to her husband's shade. Some wounds don't heal, not even in death. Finally they reached Anchises, in Elysium, the good place. Green fields, purple light, their own sun and stars, athletes exercising, poets singing, heroes feasting. Anchises was studying a crowd of souls, future Romans, waiting to be born. This was Virgil's innovation. The underworld wasn't just for the dead, it was for the unborn too. Souls waiting for bodies, drinking from Lethe to forget their divine nature, preparing for life. Anchises showed Aeneas the future. All the Romans who would come, Romulus, the kings, the Republic, Julius Caesar, Augustus, 1,000 years of future history, all waiting in the underworld, all depending on Aeneas founding the city that would birth them. Then Anchises revealed something strange. There are 2 gates out of the underworld, one of horn. True dreams pass through it, one of ivory. False dreams use that one, and he sent Aeneas and the Sibyl out through the ivory gate, the gate of false dreams. Why? Scholars have debated for 2,000 years. Was the vision false? Was Aeneas not really there? Was he dreaming? Or was it because they left before midnight? True dreams come after midnight. They left too early for truth. Psyche's journey was different again. She was mortal, completely mortal, but so beautiful that people worshipped her instead of Aphrodite. The goddess got jealous, sent Eros to make Psyche fall in love with something hideous. But Eros pricked himself with his own arrow, fell in love with her instead. Long story short, Psyche married Eros without knowing who he was, broke the one rule, don't look at me, lost him, had to perform impossible tasks to get him back. The last task came from Aphrodite herself. Go to the underworld, get some of Persephone's beauty, bring it back in this box. A mortal girl, no divine blood, no hero training, sent to the underworld. Psyche climbed a tower to throw herself off. Better to die and go as a shade than walk in alive. But the tower spoke, told her the way, through Taenarum. Take 2 coins for Charon, 2 barley cakes for Cerberus. Don't help anyone, don't talk to anyone, don't look in the box. She made it. Both ways. Asked Persephone for beauty, got the box, returned, but curiosity won. She opened the box. No beauty inside, just Stygian sleep, death sleep. She collapsed, would have died. But Eros saved her, wiped away the sleep, put it back in the box. Eventually she became immortal. The soul, that's what Psyche means, achieving divinity through trials. Each hero's journey taught something different. Heracles showed strength could conquer even death. Theseus showed stupidity had consequences even for heroes. Aeneas showed duty to family and future transcended death. Psyche showed love could motivate anyone, even mortals, to face the ultimate fear. But they all shared patterns. Preparation, usually ritual, guides, divine or semi-divine. Specific entrances, not random caves, sacred sites. Challenges that tested character, not just strength, and transformation. Everyone who returned was changed, carried death's mark, knew things the living shouldn't know. These stories gave Greeks hope. If heroes could return, maybe death wasn't absolute. Maybe the boundary was permeable. Maybe with enough courage, enough divine favor, enough preparation, anyone could make the journey. They were wrong, of course. These were heroes. Exceptions. The rules were different for them, but the stories served their purpose. They mapped the unmappable, made the terrifying familiar, showed that even in death's kingdom human virtues mattered. Courage, loyalty, love, intelligence. These things had power even in the darkest places. The philosophers weren't satisfied with stories. Heroes descending, souls judged, rivers crossed. They wanted to understand what death actually was, not mythologically, rationally. They took the underworld apart piece by piece and rebuilt it as ideas. It started with the pre-Socratics, the first philosophers, before Socrates, hence the name. They lived in the 6th century BCE, scattered across the Greek world, Miletus, Ephesus, Samos, Sicily, each one trying to explain the world without gods, without myths, using reason alone. Thales said everything was water, even souls. They evaporated at death, condensed somewhere else, maybe became new souls, maybe just became rain. He didn't elaborate, but already he was making death physical, natural, not divine punishment, just transformation of matter. Anaximander went further, said souls were made of the boundless, the apeiron, an infinite substance that everything came from, everything returned to. Death was just going home, back to the source. No Hades, no judgment, just return. But Pythagoras changed everything. He lived in the 6th century BCE, born on Samos, moved to southern Italy, started what was basically a cult. Mathematical mysticism, sacred geometry, and most importantly, metempsychosis, the transmigration of souls. Pythagoras claimed he remembered his past lives. All of them. He'd been Aethalides, Hermes' son, then Euphorbus, who fought at Troy, then Hermotimus, then Pyrrhus, a fisherman, now Pythagoras. He could prove it. Recognized Euphorbus's shield in a temple. Knew things only those people would know. This was revolutionary. The soul wasn't destroyed at death, wasn't diminished into a shade. It moved, completely, into a new body, human, animal, depending on how you lived. Live well, become a better human. Live badly, become a worse human, or an animal, or even a plant. The Pythagoreans had rules. Don't eat beans, they contain souls. Don't eat meat, that cow might be your grandmother. Don't kill anything unnecessarily. Don't break oaths. Don't be unjust. Because everything you do affects your next incarnation. They also believed in cosmic justice, not Zeus's justice, mathematical justice, the universe keeping balance, every action creating equal reaction, every injustice requiring correction. If not in this life, then the next, or the next, however many it took. Empedocles took this further. Another Pythagorean, from Sicily, claimed to be a god in exile, literally, said he'd been cast down for some cosmic crime, had to live through countless incarnations. I have been a boy, a girl, a bush, a bird, and a mute fish in the sea. He described the soul's journey in detail. First, you fall from the divine realm. Then you wander for 30,000 seasons. That's 10,000 years, incarnating as everything, learning, suffering, purifying. Finally, if you achieve perfect purity, you return to divinity. But Empedocles also said something disturbing. The world is ruled by love and strife. They alternate. During love's reign, everything merges, becomes one. During strife's reign, everything separates, becomes many. We live in strife's time. That's why we're separate individuals, why we die. Death is strife winning temporarily. Then came Heraclitus, the obscure one, the Riddler, from Ephesus. He said souls were fire, literally fire. Dry souls were wise, wet souls were foolish. Death was the soul becoming water, then earth becoming water, becoming fire again. Eternal cycle. The way up and the way down are the same. He also said something that puzzled everyone. Immortals are mortal, mortals immortal, living the other's death, dead in the other's life. What did that mean? Maybe that gods and humans exchange places. Maybe that life and death were perspectives, not absolutes. Maybe he was just being Heraclitus, deliberately confusing. Democritus had a different answer. Atoms. Everything is atoms, including souls. Soul atoms were special, smooth, round, fiery, like the atoms of fire, scattered throughout the body. When you died, they dispersed. No afterlife, no reincarnation, just atoms returning to atoms. This terrified people. No judgment, no justice, no continuation, just nothing. Democritus said that's why we should focus on this life. Achieve euthymia, cheerfulness, tranquility, not through pleasure, through moderation, through understanding, through accepting that death is natural. Then Socrates drank the hemlock. 399 BCE, executed by Athens for corrupting youth, impiety. His death changed philosophy forever, not just because a philosopher died, because of how he died, calmly, cheerfully, arguing about immortality while the poison worked. Plato was there, Socrates' student. He wrote it all down in the Phaedo. Socrates' last conversation, his arguments for immortality. The soul is simple, not composite. Things that aren't composite can't decompose. Therefore souls can't die. They're eternal, always existed, always will exist. But where do they go? Plato had answers, elaborate answers. In the Republic he tells the myth of air. A soldier who died in battle, came back 12 days later, reported what he saw. Souls being judged, good ones going up to heaven for 1,000 years of reward, bad ones going down for 1,000 years of punishment, then both groups returning, choosing new lives, from a selection laid out before them, heroes choosing to be normal people choosing to be heroes, animals becoming human, humans becoming animals. The choice depended on their previous life. Odysseus, tired of struggle, chose to be an ordinary person. Ajax, still angry, chose to be a lion. Agamemnon, betrayed by his wife, chose to be an eagle. Everyone got what they thought they wanted. Then drank from Lethe, forgot everything, started over. But Plato's real underworld was psychological. The soul had 3 parts: reason, spirit, appetite. In life they struggled. Reason should rule, but often didn't. In death they separated. Reason ascended to truth. Spirit and appetite, well, that depended on how you lived. Aristotle disagreed with his teacher. The soul wasn't separate from the body. It was the body's form, its organizing principle, like sharpness to a knife. Can sharpness exist without a knife? No. Can the soul exist without the body? No. But Aristotle hedged. Maybe the intellectual part survived. The nous, pure thought thinking about pure thought. But not personal survival. Not you, just the thinking part. Absorbed back into cosmic intelligence, cold comfort for most people. The Stoics offered something different. They were materialists. Everything is matter, even souls. But special matter, pneuma, breath, warm air, it survived death. For a while. Good souls lasted longer. Bad souls dissipated quickly. The best souls lasted until the cosmic conflagration, when the universe burned and renewed itself. But Stoics didn't fear death. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic, wrote, "Death is nothing but a transformation like birth." Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Epictetus, "I must die. Must I then die lamenting?" Their trick was reframing. Death isn't loss, it's return. You borrowed atoms from the universe. Time to give them back. You had your turn. Now others get theirs. Fighting this is like a wave fighting the ocean. Pointless, destructive, unnatural. The Epicureans went furthest. Epicurus said it plainly, death is nothing to us. Why? Because good and evil require sensation. Death is the absence of sensation. Therefore death can't be good or evil. It's nothing, literally nothing. When we exist, death is not yet present. When death is present, we no longer exist. So we never actually experience death. We experience dying, maybe, but not death itself. And dying is just weakness, pain, both of which pass, either into recovery or into nothing. The Epicureans were atomists, like Democritus. Soul atoms disperse at death. No afterlife, no judgment, no continuation. But they weren't depressed by this, liberated. No fear of punishment, no desperate hope for reward, just this life, this moment, this pleasure. Not hedonistic pleasure, refined pleasure. Friendship, contemplation, freedom from fear. The cynics didn't care. Diogenes, the most famous, was asked where he wanted to be buried. "Anywhere," he said, "throw me in a ditch. But your body will be eaten by animals. So I won't feel it. But it's undignified." For whom? Not for me. I'll be dead. The skeptics suspended judgment. Maybe souls survive. Maybe they don't. We can't know. So why worry? Pyrrho, the founder, was so calm about death that his students had to pull him out of the way of carts. He truly didn't care if he lived or died. Perfect ataraxia, tranquility. The Neoplatonists brought mystery back. Plotinus, in the 3rd century CE, described the soul's journey home, away from matter, through increasing levels of reality, back to the one, the source. Death was just one step, a necessary step, like taking off dirty clothes before bathing. Iamblichus added ritual, theurgy, divine work, specific practices to purify the soul, prepare it for ascent. He claimed to levitate during prayer, to summon divine light, to speak with gods. Death for him was graduation, from practice to reality. All these philosophies competed, argued, influenced each other, but they shared something. They took death seriously, not as myth, as fact, as problem, as opportunity. They tried to understand it, explain it, remove its terror, or at least reduce it. Some succeeded. Stoics faced death calmly. Epicureans ignored it. Platonists welcomed it. Others failed. Most people remained afraid, wanted the old stories, the geography, the judgment, the hope of something personal continuing. Philosophy offered truth, or claimed to, but people wanted comfort, meaning, justice. Things philosophy struggled to provide without smuggling in religion, which is what happened. Neoplatonism became mysticism, Stoicism became resignation, Epicureanism became hedonism, but the questions remained. What is death? What happens after? Is there justice? Does anything survive? Can reason answer these? Or do we need stories, myths, faith? The philosophers showed that death could be thought about, analysed, discussed, without gods, without myths, without fear. That was their gift and their curse. Because thinking about death and accepting death are very different things. While philosophers debated what death meant, ordinary Greeks knew exactly what to do about it. Feed the dead, talk to them, keep them happy. Because unhappy dead were dangerous dead. The Anthesteria happened every spring, 3 days in February or March. The oldest festival in Athens, older than Athens itself. It was supposed to celebrate new wine, the first taste of last year's vintage. But really it was about the dead. They came back, every year, for 3 days. Walked among the living, invisible but present, hungry, thirsty, wanting attention. Day 1 was called Pythoegia, jar opening. The wine jars were unsealed, everyone drank, even children, even slaves. 3-year-olds got their first taste, tiny cups made specially for them. We found hundreds of these cups in children's graves, decorated with scenes of other children playing, dogs, toys, happy scenes for a sad purpose. But when those jars opened, more than wine came out. The dead rose too, through cracks in the earth, through graves, through the mouths of the jars themselves. The boundary weakened, the membrane between worlds grew thin, so Athenians protected themselves, painted their doors with pitch, black tar. The dead couldn't cross it, chewed buckthorn, a thorny plant, kept it in their mouths all day. The taste was horrible, but it kept the dead from entering, from possessing, from speaking through living mouths. Day 2 was chose, jugs, drinking contests. But silent drinking. No talking, no singing. Everyone drank from separate jugs. No sharing. Because one of those drinkers might be dead. You wouldn't know. They looked like everyone else during Anthesteria, sat at tables, held cups. But if you shared wine with them, you joined them. The Queen of Athens, the Archon's wife, got married that day. To Dionysus. Or someone dressed as Dionysus. Or maybe Dionysus himself. The marriage was consummated, literally, in a sacred building called the Bucaleon. What happened inside was secret. But 9 months later, certain children were born. Special children, who knew things, saw things, had 1 foot in each world. That night, pots of food were set out. Panspermia, all seeds, every kind of grain mixed together, boiled, sweetened with honey. Not for the living. The living couldn't eat it. It was payment. Bribe. Here's your food, dead souls. Take it and go. Day 3 was Chitroi. Pots. The serious day. The dangerous day. The dead had been here 3 days now. Getting stronger. More solid. More demanding. At any moment they might decide to stay. So the living performed plays. Comedies specifically. Made the dead laugh. Reminded them that life was funny. Death was serious. They belonged to the serious place. We belonged to the funny one. The separation had to be maintained. At sunset the cry went out. Thyraid Caris. The Anthesteria is over. Get out, Carians. Carians were pre-Greek inhabitants. Long dead. But their ghosts lingered. They represented all the dead. Indigenous and foreign. Old and new. Time to go. All of you. And they went. Back to the underworld. The doors were scrubbed. The buckthorns spat out. Normal life resumed. Until next year. But the Anthesteria was just one festival. There was also the Genesia, the annual feast for family dead. 5th day of the month Bodromion. Every family visited their tombs, not the public cemetery, the family plots, where generations lay together. They brought food, real meals, whatever grandfather liked. Honey cakes for grandmother, toys for children who died young, wine, oil, sometimes blood. They poured these offerings into tubes, actual ceramic tubes built into the graves, or through holes drilled in the grave markers. The dead drank, the dead ate, the dead were satisfied. They also talked. The living spoke to the dead like they were there, because they were there. listening. Father, your son just got married. Mother, we named the baby after you. Brother, I still miss you. One-sided conversations, but Greeks believed the dead heard, cared, were comforted. Then there were the necromantians, oracles of the dead. Not festivals, but permanent installations, places where you could speak to the dead any time, for a price. The most famous was at Acheron in Thesprotia, where the Acheron River supposedly connected to the underworld. Archaeologists excavated it in 1958, found an elaborate underground complex, tunnels, chambers, mechanical devices. Here's how it worked. You made an appointment, months in advance, travelled to Thesprotia, purified yourself, special diet for days, no beans, no meat, no wine. Then you descended, through dark passages, guided by priests. The tunnels were designed to confuse, turns, drops, rises. You lost all sense of direction, distance, time. Finally you reached a chamber, dark, silent. The priest gave you something to drink, or breathe. We found traces, lupin seeds, possibly hallucinogenic. Then the dead appeared. How? Mechanical platforms that rose from below, speaking tubes that threw voices, actors maybe, or if you believed, actual spirits. You asked your questions, got your answers, paid your fees, large fees. The oracle was a business, a profitable one. But people believed. We have testimonies. Periander, tyrant of Corinth, consulted his dead wife. She complained she was cold. Her burial clothes had been burned, not buried. They didn't work in the underworld, so Periander held a massive ritual. Had every woman in Corinth go to Hera's temple, strip naked, burn their clothes as an offering to his wife. Extreme. But it shows how seriously Greeks took the comfort of the dead. There were also curse tablets, katadismoa, binding spells. Thousands have been found, thin lead sheets, inscribed with curses, rolled up, buried in graves, or thrown in wells, or placed in the mouths of skulls. I bind Theodora's tongue, her words, her deeds. Let Nicias be unsuccessful in his lawsuit. May Phila fall in love with me as this lead is cold. The dead were messengers, carriers. They took these curses to underworld powers, Hermes, Hecate, Persephone, made them real. Some tablets were elaborate, with drawings, magical words. Ablaneth and Alba, the same forwards and backwards, names of power, instructions for the dead person carrying the message. Give this to Persephone when she's in a good mood. Professional curse writers existed. You described your enemy, they wrote the curse, performed the ritual, guaranteed results. If the curse failed, you got your money back. How did they know if it worked? They kept track, had networks, information systems, like any business. The dead were also invoked in legal proceedings. Murderers were thought to be haunted by their victims. The dead demanded justice, pushed relatives to prosecute, appeared in dreams, caused illness, made life unbearable until they were avenged. Before a murder trial, both sides swore oaths at special altars. The prosecutor at the Areopagus on stones called the Stone of Ruthlessness and the Stone of Outrage, swearing by the Furies, by the dead, that their cause was just. Lying meant joining the murdered dead, becoming their victim in the afterlife. Women had special relationships with the dead. They prepared bodies, led funeral lamentations, maintained grave sites, knew the songs, the rituals, the right words. Men fought wars, women managed death. Professional mourners existed, women who specialized in grief, knew hundreds of laments, could cry on command, were paid to make funerals properly mournful. The more mourners, the more important the dead person. The louder the wailing, the greater the loss. But there were limits, laws restricting excessive mourning. Solon's laws in Athens, no tearing of clothes, no scratching faces bloody, no wailing for anyone except the person being buried. Funerals before dawn to minimize disruption. Only close family women under 60 could attend, unless they were professionals. Why restrict mourning? Because excessive grief could wake the wrong dead, attract vengeful spirits, create miasma, pollution, spiritual contamination that affected whole communities. Grief was necessary but dangerous, like the dead themselves. Ghost stories were common. Every family had them. Grandfather who appeared to warn about danger, the suicide who couldn't rest, the murder victim who revealed their killer, the child who came back to play with siblings. Pausanias, the travel writer, collected them. The ghost of Marathon who fought alongside Athenians against Persians, the hero Echetlius, who appeared with a ploughshare as a weapon. The ghosts were patriots, still defending their cities, still Greek even in death. There was the ghost at Temesa, a sailor from Odysseus's crew who'd raped a local girl. The citizens stoned him. His ghost terrorized them for generations, demanding a virgin every year, until a boxer named Euthymos challenged him, beat him in combat. Ghost boxing. The spirit fled into the sea, never returned. These weren't just stories. They were beliefs that shaped behavior, where you walked at night, how you treated graves, what you said about the dead. Words had power, names especially. Speaking ill of the dead brought consequences. They heard, they remembered, they responded. The dead were citizens of their cities, had rights, property rights especially. Tombs were inviolate. Rob a tomb, face execution, and not just human execution, divine punishment. The dead themselves would hunt you, in this life and the next. All these festivals, rituals, beliefs served the same purpose, maintaining the boundary between living and dead while acknowledging its permeability. The dead were gone but not absent, buried but not vanished. They needed attention, service, memory, and in return they provided protection, wisdom, connection to the larger story of family, city, culture. Beyond Eleusis, other mysteries promised their own paths through death, each one different, each one secret, each one claiming to offer what traditional religion couldn't, personal salvation. The Dionysian mysteries were the wildest. Dionysus wasn't just the wine god, he was the twice-born, ripped from his mother's womb when Zeus's lightning killed her, sewn into Zeus's thigh, born again. He knew about death and rebirth personally. His mysteries happened at night, in the mountains, women mostly, called Menads or Bacchae. They left their homes, their looms, their children, ran to the wilderness, drank wine mixed with ivy, ate raw meat, danced until they collapsed, became animals, became gods, became something else entirely. What they experienced was in Theos, the god within. Dionysus possessed them, spoke through them, showed them visions, their own deaths, their own rebirths, the eternal cycle. They came back changed, knowing something, unable to say what. Men could join too, but differently. They had to dress as women first, acknowledge the feminine, the irrational, the emotional, everything Greek men usually suppressed. Only then could Dionysus enter them. We have the gold tablets from Dionysian burials, different from Orphic ones, shorter, more direct. I am a son of earth and starry sky. I am parched with thirst and perishing. Give me cold water from the lake of memory. Then this. Tell Persephone that Bacchios himself released you. Bacchios, another name for Dionysus, he released you from what? The cycle of rebirth? The prison of the body? The fear of death? The tablets don't say, but the initiates knew. They'd experienced it. The release, the freedom, the ecstasy that transcended death. The great gods of Samothrace offered something different. Protection, specifically protection at sea, but also in the afterlife. The island of Samothrace in the North Aegean hosted these mysteries. Kings came. Philip of Macedon met Olympias there, conceived Alexander. Herodotus was initiated, so was Plato. The gods weren't named publicly, just called the great gods, or the Kabiroi. Scholars think they were pre-Greek, Thracian, Phrygian, ancient. Their language wasn't Greek. Their priests used translators. The mysteries happened in a language nobody understood, but they worked. Initiates wore iron rings, purple sashes, recognized each other across the Mediterranean, helped each other, created the first international religious network. If your ship was sinking, you called on the great gods. If someone else on board was initiated, they had to save you. Religious obligation. The initiation was intense. Confession first. Public. Everything you'd done wrong. Ever. Murder. Theft. Adultery. All of it. The priest decided if you could continue. Some were rejected, sent away, too polluted. Even mysteries had standards. If accepted, you entered the anakteron, the sacred building. Something happened with fire and water and blood. We know because initiates had burn scars, specific patterns, marks of belonging, marks of protection, marks that the great gods would recognize in the afterlife. The Kabirian mysteries near Thebes were stranger. The gods were dwarves, or children, or both, Kabiros and his son, or sons. The mythology was confused, deliberately confused. The priests gave different answers to different people. The initiation involved drinking, a lot. Wine mixed with something. Initiates reported transformations, becoming animals, becoming giants, becoming stars, seeing the cosmos from outside, understanding their place in it, small, insignificant, but also essential, part of the pattern. They also involved jokes, dirty jokes, like at Eleusis, but more extreme. Initiates were mocked, humiliated, stripped, painted, made to dance naked. Why? To break down ego, pride, the things that made you fear death. If you could survive humiliation, you could survive anything, even dying. The Andanian mysteries in Messenia were the most organized. We have their rule book, a complete inscription, found in 1858. 94 lines of regulations. What to wear, white only. What to sacrifice, pregnant sheep preferred. How to camp, men and women separately. What to pay, different rates for different services. They had a sacred drama, performed by priests. The story of the first initiation, the gods teaching humans the mysteries, but also a trial, a judgment. Someone was accused, defended, condemned, saved. The initiates participated, chose sides, experienced justice, divine justice, the kind that operated in the afterlife. The mysteries of Aegina centered on Hecate, the crossroads goddess, the one who knew all paths, including the paths through death. Her initiates learned to navigate, not just the underworld, but life's crossroads, decisions, transitions, deaths and rebirths, literal and metaphorical. Her mysteries happened at new moons, complete darkness. Initiates brought dogs, black dogs, sacrificed them at triple crossroads, where 3 roads met, liminal spaces, boundaries, places where worlds touched. They ate a meal called deepna, left at crossroads, eggs, cakes, honey, fish, garlic. But they ate it in a specific way, without looking back, without speaking, without stopping. One mistake and Hecate's hounds would chase them. Ghost dogs. You'd hear them barking for the rest of your life, following, waiting, until you died and they caught you. The Orphic mysteries we've discussed. But they deserve mention here too. They were different from the others, book-based. You could buy initiation, literally. Orphic priests sold it door to door, brought their books, their rituals, their promises, salvation for a price. But sincere Orphics lived differently, vegetarian, ascetic, wearing white wool only, no leather, no beans, no eggs, no wine except in rituals. They were practicing for death, training the soul to separate from the body, to remember its divine nature, to escape the wheel of reincarnation. All these mysteries competed but also complemented each other. You could be initiated into several, Many people were. Collecting salvations, insurance policies, different mysteries for different needs. Eleusis for agricultural fertility and peaceful death. Dionysus for ecstatic transcendence. Great gods for protection. Orphism for escape from rebirth. What united them was personalization. Traditional Greek religion was communal, city festivals, family rituals, public sacrifices. The mysteries were personal. Your initiation, your salvation, your relationship with divinity, your death, your afterlife. They also shared secrecy, real secrecy, enforced by death penalties, social ostracism, divine punishment. We know so little because initiates kept quiet. For centuries, millions of people maintaining silence. That itself tells us something. Whatever they experienced was powerful enough to command permanent loyalty. The mysteries influenced each other, borrowed symbols, shared vocabulary, created a common language of salvation, rebirth, purification, illumination, union with divinity, escape from mortality, terms that would later pass into Christianity, not accidentally. Because Christianity was in many ways another mystery religion, a Jewish mystery cult that broke containment, became universal, offered what all mysteries offered, personal salvation, secret knowledge, death transcended, but without the secrecy, without the ethnic restrictions, without the multiple levels and fees. Paul knew this, used mystery language deliberately. We speak God's wisdom in a mystery. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. He was speaking to Greeks who understood. This new god died and rose, like Dionysus, like Persephone, like the grain at Eleusis, but for everyone, free. The mysteries prepared the ground for Christianity, taught pagans to expect personal salvation, to seek initiation, to believe in afterlife transformation. When Christianity arrived, the framework was ready, the vocabulary established, the hunger present, but that was later. For centuries, the mysteries thrived, gave millions meaning, purpose, hope, a sense that death wasn't random, wasn't final, wasn't meaningless. That proper knowledge, proper initiation, proper living could transform humanity's oldest fear into humanity's greatest transition. Rome conquered Greece militarily in 146 BCE, but Greece conquered Rome culturally. Nowhere was this clearer than in beliefs about death. Romans had their own underworld. Orcus, the Manes, the Lemures, ancient shadowy concepts. Then they encountered Greek mythology, detailed, dramatic, irresistible. Within a generation, educated Romans were using Greek names. Hades became Pluto, Persephone became Proserpina, Hermes Psychopompos became Mercury. The rivers got Latin names but kept Greek functions. Styx stayed Styx. Acheron became Acheros. The architecture remained identical, but Romans added their own touches, bureaucracy for one. Greek underworld was chaotic, personal, based on individual relationships between gods and heroes. Roman underworld had procedures, forms, proper channels, just like Roman government. Virgil showed this perfectly in the Aeneid, written around 20 BCE, Book 6, Aeneas's Descent. It's the most detailed underworld description in ancient literature. More organized than any Greek version, regions clearly marked, populations sorted, everything in its proper place. The entrance had a vestibule, like a Roman government building. Abstract evils lived there as personifications: grief, disease, old age, fear, hunger, poverty, death, sleep, joy of evil, war, the Furies, discord, all with specific locations, addresses almost. Then came the sorting area. Minos judging, but not alone. A whole court system. Different judges for different cases. Europeans to Rhadamanthes, Asians to Aeacus. Difficult cases to Minos. Appeals possible. Roman law operating even in death. The geography was more detailed too. 9 circles of Styx. specific punishment zones in Tartarus, detailed paradise in Elysium. But Virgil added something new, a purification area, not quite purgatory, that's Christian, but souls being cleansed, prepared for reincarnation. This was Virgil's innovation. Souls hung in the wind, washed in whirlpools, burned in fire, not as punishment, but as purification, removing the stains of life, the corruption of embodiment, making souls clean enough to live again. And the future souls, waiting to be born, all the heroes of Rome, Romulus, Brutus, the Scipios, Caesar, Augustus, all pre-existing in the underworld, waiting for their time, history as destiny, already written, already waiting. Romans also transformed funeral practices. Greek funerals were relatively simple, washing, laying out, procession, burial or cremation. Romans made them spectacular, especially for the elite. The funeral procession was theatre. Professional actors wore masks of the dead person's ancestors, walked in chronological order. The entire family history animated, walking, visible. The dead joining the dead publicly, dramatically. For emperors, it was even more elaborate. Nero's funeral lasted days. Augustus's included a wax effigy that was burned separately from his body, creating two ceremonies, two deaths. Two deaths, the physical and the symbolic. Gladiatorial games started as funeral rites, blood offerings for the dead. The first recorded gladiator fight was at a funeral in 264 BCE. 3 pairs of gladiators. By Julius Caesar's time, hundreds fought at aristocratic funerals. The dead needed blood, entertainment, spectacle. The Romans had their own festivals for the dead. The Parentalia in February, 9 days of honouring ancestors, temples closed, marriages forbidden. Magistrates wore no insignia. The state itself paused to remember the dead. Families visited tombs, not quietly like Greeks. Romans had parties, picnics at grave sites, brought food, wine, flowers, violets especially, told stories, jokes, caught up the dead on family news, made them part of ongoing life. The Lemuria was different, darker. 3 days in May when hostile dead returned, not ancestors, the restless dead, the murdered, the unburied, the forgotten. They entered houses, caused illness, madness, death. The ritual to expel them was specific. The father of the house woke at midnight, washed his hands, walked barefoot through the house, threw black beans over his shoulder, said 9 times, "With these beans I redeem myself and mine," then banged bronze pots, made noise, shouted, "Ghosts of my fathers, depart!" 9 times, always 9, sacred number. Romans also democratized the underworld. Greeks focused on heroes, special people. Romans included everyone. Every Roman citizen mattered, had a tomb inscription, a memorial, rights even in death. The epitaphs tell us everything. Here lies Marcus Baker, age 45. He made good bread. Claudia, devoted wife, mother of 3, lived 23 years. Stop, traveller, and read. I was once what you are. You will be what I am. Some were funny. I was not. I was. I am not. I don't care. Or, here lies Proculus, finally quiet. Or, wine and sex ruin our bodies. But what makes life worth living except wine and sex? Romans built tombs along roads, not hidden in cemeteries, visible, part of daily life. The Via Appia was lined with thousands. You couldn't leave Rome without passing the dead, couldn't enter without meeting them. They were citizens still, present, participating. The catacombs came later, Christian originally, but following Roman precedent. Underground cities of the dead. Miles of tunnels, hundreds of thousands of burials, organized like Roman neighborhoods, streets, addresses, family sections, the dead organized as carefully as the living. Roman emperors complicated everything. When Augustus died in 14 CE, The Senate declared him divine, a god, not metaphorically, literally, with temples, priests, sacrifices. But where did divine emperors go after death? Not the regular underworld. They became stars, constellations, watched over Rome from heaven. This created theological problems. If emperors became gods, what about their families, their favourites? How divine did you need to be? The Emperor Hadrian declared his dead lover Antinous a god, built temples, established mysteries, created a new constellation, love conquering death through imperial decree. Mystery religions flourished in Rome. Isis worship promised resurrection. Mithraism offered soldiers salvation. 7 levels of initiation. Cosmic journey through planetary spheres. Death as promotion. Moving up through ranks to join the sun god. The Romans were practical about death. Built columbaria, dovecotes for ashes, thousands of niches, affordable, organised, each one labelled. The poor could have proper burial, dignity, place, memory, death industrialised but humanised. They also legalised death, wills, inheritance, specific laws about tombs, who could be buried where, who maintained graves, who inherited burial rights. Death became property law, contract law, family law. The Roman genius for organisation applied to eternity. Latin literature explored death endlessly. Lucretius explaining atomic dissolution. Cicero dreaming of cosmic souls. Seneca counselling suicide as freedom. Ovid transforming everything into everything else. Death as metamorphosis, not ending but change. But the Roman transformation that mattered most was scale. Greeks had hundreds of local underworlds, each city its own entrance, its own traditions. Romans created one universal underworld, standardized, organized, accessible to every Roman citizen from Britain to Syria. When you died in Roman Manchester or Roman Alexandria, you went to the same underworld, met the same judges, crossed the same rivers, joined the same community of Roman dead. Death became imperial, universal, Catholic in the original sense, embracing all. This prepared the way for Christianity, one God, one death, one judgment, one afterlife. The infrastructure was Roman, the bureaucracy, the universalism, the promise of citizenship in death's kingdom. Christianity would fill Roman forms with new content, but the forms were already there, waiting. Christianity didn't destroy the Greek underworld immediately. It absorbed it, transformed it, weaponized it, turned Hades into hell, turned mythology into theology, turned stories into dogma. The word Hades appears in the New Testament 11 times, not as mythology, as fact. Jesus tells the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man dies, goes to Hades, tormented in flames, sees Lazarus in Abraham's bosom, begs for water, gets nothing. The geography is Greek, the judgment is Jewish, the combination is revolutionary. Early Christians were Jews, they had Sheol, the pit, where all dead went, good and bad, a shadowy existence like Homer's Underworld. But they encountered Greeks, educated Greeks, who expected detailed afterlife geography, so Christians provided it. Paul spoke in Athens at the Areopagus, where murder trials happened, where the Furies were worshipped. He said God would judge the world through a man raised from the dead. The Greeks laughed. Bodies don't resurrect, souls might transmigrate, might ascend. But bodies? Ridiculous. But some listened. Dionysius the Areopagite, Damaris, others. They heard something familiar, a god who died and returned, like Dionysus, like Persephone, like the mysteries promised, but universal. No fees, no secret knowledge, just faith. The Book of Revelation, written around 95 CE, mixed everything together. Jewish apocalypse, Greek imagery, Roman politics, death and Hades personified as horsemen, the dead judged from books, like Roman bureaucracy, a lake of fire, like Persephone, death and Hades thrown into the lake, destroyed, the underworld itself dying. This was new. Greeks never imagined destroying the underworld. It was eternal, necessary, part of cosmic order. Christians said no, death is an enemy, the last enemy, to be destroyed, utterly, finally, forever. But first, it would be used, expanded, made terrible. The Greek underworld had one torture zone, Tartarus, for cosmic criminals. Christianity made torture default. Unless saved, you burned, forever. Not for offending gods personally, for being human, for inheriting sin, for existing. The geography expanded too. Jesus descended to Hades, between crucifixion and resurrection. 3 days, like Inanna, like Orpheus, like every mystery religion hero. But he didn't negotiate, didn't charm. He conquered, broke the gates, freed the righteous dead, left the rest. This became the harrowing of hell, not biblical, but believed. Depicted in countless icons, Christ standing on broken gates, pulling Adam and Eve from tombs, behind him all the righteous dead, Abraham, Moses, David, John the Baptist, ahead of him Satan bound, Hades defeated, death itself dying. But where did this happen? Christians needed geography, so they borrowed, adapted, synthesized, the interim state, where souls wait for judgment, like the asphodel meadows, paradise, where the righteous wait, like Elysium, Abraham's bosom, like the blessed isles. Then the final judgment, more elaborate than anything Greek, all the dead resurrected, bodies restored, standing before Christ's throne, books opened, deeds read, final sorting, sheep and goats, saved and damned, no appeals, no mysteries to help, no reincarnation, one life, one death, one judgment, forever. The punishments became specific, detailed, eternal. The Apocalypse of Peter, 2nd century, describes them. Blasphemers hung by their tongues, women who adorned themselves to seduce burn in fire, men who had sex with men thrown off cliffs repeatedly, murderers in pits with venomous beasts, each sin getting its perfect punishment, like Tantalus, like Sisyphus. But for everyone, church fathers elaborated. Tertullian said the saved would watch the damned burn. Entertainment, justice visible. Origen suggested eventual universal salvation. Everyone eventually purified. He was declared heretical. Augustine said unbaptized babies went to hell. Maybe a nice part, limbo, but still hell. Because of Adam's sin, inherited guilt. Cosmic injustice made divine justice. But Christians faced a problem. Educated pagans knew the underworld was mythological. Stories, metaphors. Plato said so. Cicero said so. How could Christians claim their version was real? They attacked pagan underworld as demonic deception, real but false. The gods were demons. Hades was Satan. The mysteries were devil worship. The oracle at Delphi, demon-possessed. The Eleusinian visions, demonic illusions. Everything pagan was real but evil, dangerous, damning. This justified destruction. In 392 CE, Theodosius banned pagan worship. Christian mobs destroyed temples, burned libraries, murdered philosophers, the Serapeum in Alexandria, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Parthenon converted to a church, the Eleusinian Mysteries ended, the oracle at Delphi silenced. They literally sealed underworld entrances, the cave at Taenarum blocked, the Acheron Necromantion destroyed, Lake Avernus exorcised, blessed, made safe. No more doorways to the underworld, because Christ had conquered it, made it unnecessary, obsolete. But people still needed the old stories, so Christians rewrote them. Orpheus became a type of Christ, descending to save. Hercules prefigured Christ, conquering death. Odysseus tied to the mast represented Christ on the cross, Everything pagan became secretly Christian, prophecy disguised. The Greek language helped. New Testament written in Greek, using Greek philosophical terms, logos, pneuma, psyche, Hades, Gehenna. The vocabulary of Greek philosophy and mythology repurposed, filled with new meaning, but echoing old meanings. Educated Christians like Clement of Alexandria knew Greek philosophy, used it, argued that Plato prepared the way for Christ, that Greek wisdom was partial revelation, incomplete but not false. The underworld Greeks imagined was real, just misunderstood, incomplete, waiting for Christian revelation to complete it. But ordinary Christians wanted what pagans had: festivals, rituals, comfort. So the Church adapted. All Souls' Day replaced Anthesteria. Prayers for the dead replaced offerings. Saints replaced heroes. Martyrs' tombs became pilgrimage sites, like hero cults. The dead still mattered, still helped, still needed attention. Purgatory developed, not biblical, but necessary. A place for purification, like Virgil's souls hanging in wind, washed in water, burned in fire. Not hell, not heaven, between, temporary, hopeful, the underworld reformed, made Christian, made moral. Dante perfected it. The Divine Comedy, written 1308-1320, the ultimate Christian underworld, 9 circles of hell, like Virgil's 9 circles of Styx, specific punishments for specific sins, like Greek Tartarus, but systematized, organized, scholastic. Virgil guides Dante, the pagan leading the Christian, through hell, through purgatory, to paradise's edge. Then Beatrice takes over, love replacing reason, Christian replacing pagan, but building on pagan foundation. The geography is Greek, rivers, ferrymen, judges, monsters. The theology is Christian, sin, redemption, grace. The combination is seamless. 2,000 years of underworld tradition synthesized, made art, made theology, made real for millions. The Protestant Reformation challenged this. No purgatory, no prayers for the dead, no intermediate state, just heaven or hell, immediately, simply. But people missed the complexity, the geography, the story, the hope of development, progress, purification. Modern Christianity still struggles with this. Liberal Christians allegorize hell. Conservatives insist on literal flames, but both use Greek vocabulary, Greek concepts, Greek geography, Hades, Gehenna, paradise, Abraham's bosom, the underworld conquered but not destroyed, transformed but recognizable. Because Christianity needed what Greece provided: a detailed afterlife, a geography of death, a story that made sense of suffering, justice, hope, fear. The Christian hell is the Greek underworld baptized, converted, made infinite, eternal, universal. The revolution wasn't destroying the underworld, it was claiming it, making it real, making it moral, making it matter ultimately, forever. No escape, no reincarnation, no mysteries to help. Just faith, grace, judgment. The Greek underworld made absolute, but something was lost. The variety, the local entrances, the negotiability, the personality. Greek underworld had room for exceptions, heroes, cleverness, love conquering death. Christian hell has no exceptions, no negotiations, no escape, perfect justice, perfectly terrible. The Greek underworld was human, messy, contradictory, multiple. The Christian hell is divine, systematic, consistent, singular. The Greek underworld evolved, changed, grew. The Christian hell is eternal, fixed, final, the same yesterday, today, forever. That's the revolution. Not replacing the underworld, making it absolute, taking human imagination about death and declaring it divine revelation, taking stories and making them dogma, taking fear and making it infinite, taking hope and making it exclusive. The Greek underworld didn't die. It became eternal, fixed, frozen, forever. The Greek underworld was supposed to be mythology, stories, imagination. Then archaeologists started digging and found it. Not the actual underworld, but the infrastructure, the entrances, the rituals, the beliefs made physical, real, tangible. Heinrich Schliemann started it. The grocery clerk turned millionaire. The amateur who believed Homer was history. In 1876 he excavated Mycenae, found the shaft graves, the gold masks, one mask especially beautiful. He telegraphed the Greek king, "I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon." He was wrong. The mask was centuries older than Agamemnon, but he was also right. He'd found the world Homer described, the Bronze Age reality behind the stories, the actual graves, the actual gold, the actual belief that death required treasure. The masks weren't just funeral decoration, they were portraits, individual features, specific faces. The dead needed their faces in the afterlife, needed to be recognized, identified. The masks ensured that. Gold because gold doesn't decay, eternal faces for eternal souls. But the real breakthrough came in 1958. The Necromanteon of Acheron, the Oracle of the Dead, mentioned by Homer, Herodotus, Pausanias, but considered mythical. Then Soterios Dakaris found it, an entire underground complex, exactly where ancient sources said it would be. The architecture was incredible, deliberately disorienting. Corridors that doubled back, stairs that led nowhere, rooms with no exits, acoustic chambers that created echoes, voices from nowhere, mechanical devices, windlasses for making things fly, counterweights for moving walls, theatre machinery for creating ghosts. They found storage jars with residue, analysed it, lupine seeds, broad beans, both potentially hallucinogenic in large doses. The priests were drugging visitors, creating visions, manufacturing the afterlife experience, but people believed it, paid fortunes for it, travelled hundreds of miles for it. The most amazing discovery, the central chamber, where the dead supposedly appeared. It had a hidden basement, with mechanisms for raising platforms. Actors could rise from below, appear, speak, disappear. The dead were theatrical productions, special effects, but effective enough that people believed for centuries. Then came the Derveni Papyrus, 1962, road construction near Thessaloniki. Workers found a tomb, inside a bronze container, inside that a rolled papyrus, burned but readable, the oldest European book about the soul's journey after death. It was an Orphic text, commentary on a poem about the underworld, instructions for the dead. You will find in the halls of Hades a spring on the left and standing by it a white cypress tree. Do not approach this spring at all. You will find another, the same instructions found on gold tablets, but earlier, more detailed, with commentary explaining the symbolism. The spring on the left is Lethe, forgetfulness. The cypress is death, white because bones are white. The other spring is memory, drink from it. Remember your divine nature. The gold tablets themselves keep appearing, 43 so far, from graves across the Greek world, Thurii, Petelia, Pharsalus, Crete, each one slightly different, but all containing passwords, instructions, maps. I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is heavenly. You yourselves know this. I am parched with thirst and am dying. Give me quickly cold water flowing from the lake of memory. Some tablets have dialogues. The soul speaks. The guardians respond. Who are you? Where are you from? I am a son of a heavy earth and starry heaven. My name is Asterios. They had to know their cosmic genealogy, their true identity, not their human name, their divine name. In 1997, archaeologists at Eleusis found a relief. Roman era, showing parts of the mysteries. Demeter handing something to a young man, Persephone holding torches, a child emerging from the ground, or a basket, or flames. The image is deliberately ambiguous. Even in art the secret was kept. But they also found the telesterion, the initiation hall, massive, rock-cut seats for 3,000 people, a raised platform in the centre, the anacteron, the Holy of Holies. Only foundations remain. Christians destroyed the rest, but enough to show the scale, the organisation, the theatricality. At Hierapolis in Turkey they found the plutonium, the gate to hell, mentioned by Strabo, Cicero, still functioning, still deadly, a cave that emits carbon dioxide, birds flying over drop-dead. Priests could enter briefly, hold their breath. The gas is heavier than air, stays low, they stood tall, survived, seemed immortal, immune to death. Modern archaeology revealed the mechanics, but also the belief. At Cumae, Aeneas's entrance, they found an elaborate tunnel system, the Sibyl's Cave, carved from solid rock, with light shafts creating dramatic illumination, acoustic effects, voices carrying impossibly far, the architecture of awe. Lake Avernus nearby, volcanic crater, still sulphurous, still bird-free in places. The Romans built a tunnel under it. To the underworld? No, to the naval base at Baiae. But they told people it went to Hades, used the mythology, the fear, the power of place. DNA analysis changes everything now. Skeleton in a Macedonian tomb, gold wreath, Orphic tablet, male, age 30-40, died of infection, but his bones show lifetime malnutrition. Poor diet, hard labour, not aristocratic, but he had gold for the afterlife, saved everything for death, believed completely. Isotope analysis tells us where people were born, where they travelled. A woman buried at Eleusis, born in Syria, travelled to Egypt, died in Greece. Initiated at multiple mystery sites. Her bones show the journey, the seeking, the desperate hope for better death. At Vergina, ancient Aegina, they found royal tombs, intact. Philip sect of Macedon, possibly, painted with underworld scenes, Hades abducting Persephone, but also daily life, hunting, feasting, the afterlife as continuation, improvement, not transformation. The paintings show something important. Colour. The underworld wasn't grey in Greek imagination, it had colour. Persephone's robes are red. Hades' throne is gold. The dead wear purple. The rivers are properly blue, black or fiery. Death had spectrum, variety, beauty even. Pottery tells stories too. Thousands of vases with underworld scenes. Orpheus charming Cerberus, Heracles wrestling death, souls being judged, but also tender scenes, dead couples reuniting, children playing, dogs waiting for masters, the human side of death. The Dipollon Cemetery in Athens, thousands of graves, centuries of burial, patterns emerge, family plots maintained for generations, offerings renewed annually, the dead remembered, named, visited, part of ongoing life, not forgotten, not abandoned, citizens still. Computer modelling reveals acoustic properties. The telesterion at Eleusis, perfect acoustics. A whisper from the anacteron could be heard by all 3,000 initiates, but selectively. Different seats heard different frequencies. The priest could make some people hear things others didn't. Personalised revelation, individual mystery. Ground-penetrating radar finds more caves, more entrances. Every major Greek city had one, or several. Local underworld access, regional variations, the cave at Lebedeia, the oracle of Trophonius, still unexplored, too dangerous, carbon monoxide. The ancients were right, some entrances kill. But the biggest revelation is breadth. Every Greek community had underworld infrastructure, graves, shrines, curse tablets, mystery sites, hero cults. This wasn't marginal belief, wasn't elite philosophy. Everyone participated. Everyone believed. Everyone prepared for death systematically, continuously, expensively. Modern techniques keep revealing more. Multispectral imaging finds hidden text on burnt papyri. Chemical analysis identifies ancient drugs. Genetic studies trace mystery cult lineages. Every year, we understand more. The Greek underworld becomes more real, more complex, more human, but also more mysterious. The more we find, the more we realize we don't know. What exactly happened at Eleusis? What did initiates see, experience? Why did it work for 2,000 years? How did myths become so real that people shaped their entire lives around them? Archaeology gives us the stage, the props, the machinery, but not the performance, not the belief, not the transformation. We can walk through the necromantean, but we can't see the dead. We can sit in the telesterion, but we can't experience the mystery. We can read the gold tablets, but we don't know if they worked. The Greek underworld never really died. It just changed addresses, moved from religion to psychology, from mythology to literature, from belief to metaphor. But it's still here, still shaping how we think about death, still offering maps for the unmappable journey. Freud found it first, or claimed he did. The unconscious as underworld, hidden, dark, full of repressed shades, dreams as descents, analysis as nequia, summoning the dead parts of ourselves, making them speak, the therapist as psychopomp, guide of souls. He named our drives after Greek death. Thanatos, the death drive, the urge toward dissolution, return to the inorganic, every organism's desire to die in its own way, opposed by eros, life drive. But Thanatos always wins eventually. We're all heading underworld. Jung went deeper. The collective unconscious as literal underworld, shared by all humanity, populated by archetypes, the shadow, the anima, the self, like Greek gods, powers that live below consciousness, influence everything, need recognition, respect, integration. The hero's journey to the underworld became psychological necessity. Everyone must descend, face their shadow, integrate their darkness, return transformed, or stay stuck, become Theseus trapped on the chair, Pirate House frozen forever, the myths as psychological maps, instructions for individuation. Modern therapy uses underworld imagery constantly, processing grief, going down into pain, integrating trauma, bringing the dead experience back to life, shadow work, meeting the denied parts. The therapeutic journey is Orpheus descending, trying to retrieve lost parts, sometimes succeeding, sometimes looking back too soon. Literature never stopped descending. Joyce's Ulysses, Leopold Bloom as Odysseus, Dublin as Underworld, the dead everywhere, Paddy Dignam's funeral, Bloom's dead son, his father's suicide, the cemetery episode, Hades, the dead more present than the living, T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. I had not thought death had undone so many. London as Underworld, commuters as shades, the Thames as Styx, Tiresias presiding, seeing all, understanding nothing, modern life as death in life, needing water, resurrection, spring, Margaret Atwood's Penelopiad, the Odyssey from Penelope's view, narrated from Hades, the maids as chorus, the dead telling their version, correcting Homer, the underworld as place where truth finally emerges, where the silenced speak. Film loves the underworld. Orpheus descending becomes every movie about retrieving someone from death, or death-like state. Inception, dreams within dreams, deeper levels, each more dangerous, the deepest level, limbo, where Mal waits, like Eurydice. The look back, the loss, the return alone. The Matrix, the real world as underworld. Dark, mechanical, true. The Matrix as false life, bright, comfortable, enslaving. Neo's journey, death and resurrection, becoming the one, saving others. Classic mystery religion structure, initiation, revelation, salvation. Video games make us all Orpheus, Hades the game. You play Zagreus, Hades' son, trying to escape the underworld, dying repeatedly, each death teaching something, the roguelike structure perfect for Greek death. Repetition, Sisyphean, but with progress. Hope, story emerging through failure. Dark Souls, death as mechanic, not failure, learning opportunity, the world as underworld, everything dead or dying, hollowing, losing humanity, becoming shade, but also kindling fires, creating light, temporary, fragile, necessary. Modern paganism tries to reconstruct the mysteries. Eleusis in California, Orphic groups online, people seeking what was lost, the promise of initiated death. Better afterlife through knowledge, secret wisdom, but without the culture, the belief, the community, playing at mystery. Environmental movements use underworld imagery. Gaia theory. Earth as living system, Hades as oil, coal, buried death we're releasing. Climate change as Persephone's return delayed. Eternal winter coming, unless we remember the mysteries, the balance, the cycle. Modern Greek folklore keeps the old stories, rural villages, mountain communities, the Nereids, water nymphs who steal children. Take them underground, the Kallikantzaroi, Christmas goblins from the underworld, trying to cut the world tree, end everything, driven back by blessing. Greeks still leave food for the dead. Coliva, boiled wheat, pomegranate seeds, almonds, parsley, offered 40 days after death. 1 year, 3 years, 7. The dead need feeding, still thirsty, still hungry, still present. The word panic comes from Pan, god of wild places, whose shout caused terror. Panic attacks feel like death. Heart racing, can't breathe. Certainty of doom. The body thinking it's dying. Preparing. The underworld breaking through. Requiring descent. Integration. Understanding. Depression as underworld experience. The DSM doesn't say that, but everyone knows. The grey world, emotional death. Nothing matters, nothing helps. Lethe in life. Forgetting joy. Purpose. Self. The clinical term versus lived experience. Flatness versus depth. Near-death experiences follow Greek patterns. Tunnel, light, dead relatives, life review, choice to return. The architecture remarkably consistent, cross-cultural, as if we're all wired for the same underworld journey, the same geography, the same story. Grief follows Demeter's pattern, searching, denying, bargaining, raging, creating meaning, establishing rituals, finding compromise, learning to live with absence, presence, the seasonal return of pain, joy, memory, the pomegranate seeds that bind us to loss. Popular culture can't stop retelling. Percy Jackson, Disney's Hercules, Hades Town, the myth as Broadway musical, Orpheus as singer-songwriter, Eurydice choosing her fate, Hades as industrialist, capitalism as underworld, workers as shades, repetition, exhaustion. The old stories explaining now. Psychology textbooks reference Greek myths constantly. Narcissism, echoism, Cassandra complex, Sisyphean tasks, Tantalus torment. The myth's more useful than clinical language, more accurate, truer to experience. 3,000 years of observing human nature, distilled, named, remembered. Even our idioms are underworld touched. Crossing the river. Paying the ferryman, hell to pay, speak of the devil. Between the devil and the deep blue sea, the deep sea as underworld entrance. Ancient memory and daily speech. Modern death practices echo Greek ones. Funeral homes as necromantia, embalming as gold mask, makeup on corpses, making them look alive, viewable, recognizable. The open casket as Greek laying out, prothesis, The dead displayed, honoured, gradually released. Transhumanism promises technological underworld, upload consciousness, digital afterlife, virtual eternity, the same promise as mysteries, death transcended, identity preserved, but technological, rational, scientific, the underworld as server farm, the soul as code, Hades as systems administrator. The Greek underworld persists because it named something true. Death is a place, has geography, requires navigation. The living need maps, stories, guides. The dead need remembrance, honour, connection. The boundary needs maintenance, crossing, return. We keep telling these stories because we need them. They do what philosophy can't, what science won't, what religion struggles with. They make death imaginable, navigable, survivable. Not the dying, the aftermath, the continuation, the story after the story ends. We began with the Daveni Papyrus, that charred scroll found by accident, promising navigation through death, instructions for the last journey, the one we all take, the one no one returns from to tell us if the map was accurate. The Greeks gave us something unprecedented. Not just an afterlife, every culture has that, but a complete geography, rivers with names, guardians with personalities, regions with purposes, rules, exceptions, stories, a place you could study, prepare for, almost visit. They made death democratic. Before the Greeks, afterlife was for kings. Pharaohs became gods. Chinese emperors had terracotta armies. Mesopotamian rulers had harps in their tombs. Everyone else just died, disappeared, forgotten. But in the Greek underworld, everyone arrived. Heroes and cowards, kings and slaves, men and women, Greeks and barbarians, all became shades, all crossed the same rivers, faced the same judges, entered the same darkness, death as the great equalizer, the ultimate democracy. Yet they also made it personal. Your coins for Sharon, your password for the Guardians, your initiation determining your destination, your choices mattering, even in death, especially in death, when everything else was stripped away, only essence remained. The geography evolved. Homer's vague shadows became Plato's detailed regions, became Virgil's systematic circles, became Dante's mathematical precision, each age adding detail, complexity, meaning, the map growing more elaborate, more complete, more impossible, but always recognizable, always Greek at core, the rivers, the dog, the ferryman, the judges, the punishments, the rewards, the basic architecture unchanged, 3,000 years, still standing, still functioning, still true, because the Greeks understood something. Death needs geography, the unimaginable needs images, the unspeakable needs names. We can't think about nothing, but we can think about places, dark places, strange places, but places with landmarks, boundaries, rules. Modern science gives us different maps: brain death, cellular death, decomposition, atoms returning to atoms, energy conserving, matter transforming. Nothing lost, nothing gained, just changed, rearranged, recycled. But that's not enough. We still need stories, still need meaning, still need to imagine continued existence, connection, justice, purpose. The Greek underworld provides that, not as belief, as structure, framework, language for the unspeakable. Every funeral is Greek. The laying out, the procession, the burial, the offerings, flowers instead of coins, eulogies instead of laments, photographs instead of gold masks. But the same impulse: make the dead presentable, honourable, rememberable, send them properly equipped. Every grief is Demeter's, the search, the rage, the bargaining, the partial recovery, learning to live with absence, presence, the seasonal return, the pomegranate seeds of memory, sweet, bitter, binding. Every near-death experience is a catabasis, a descent, a journey there and back, changed, marked, knowing something, unable to fully tell, like Orpheus, like Odysseus, like all who return from darkness, carrying light or claiming to. The underworld remains because we need it, not the literal place, the psychological space, the imaginal realm where the dead live, in memory, dream, story, culture, language, the place that isn't a place, that exists without existing. The Greeks knew the underworld was constructed. Their poets built it, added rivers, regions, residents. Their priests modified it, promised better accommodations. Their philosophers rationalized it, made it metaphor, meaning, mind. But they also knew it was real. Real as language, real as culture, real as human need for meaning. The underworld exists because we exist, because we die, because we remember, because we fear, hope, love, grieve, because we're human. The geography of forever isn't fixed, isn't final, isn't true in the way science is true. It's true in the way stories are true, the way dreams are true, the way memories are true, not factual, but actual, not literal, but literary, not real, but necessary. The Greeks gave us permission to map the unmappable, to name the unnameable, to visit the unvisitable, to return from the unreturnable. They showed us how to make death a place, a story, a journey, not an ending, a transformation, a continuation, a geography. And now, as you drift towards sleep, you're approaching that geography yourself, not permanently, just visiting. Dreams as temporary death, sleep as practice, rehearsal. Every night you descend, every morning you return, changed, restored, carrying fragments, memories, messages from the geography of forever. The Greeks would understand. They knew sleep and death were brothers, Hypnos and Thanatos, twins, one temporary, one permanent, but the same family, the same realm, the same journey, just different durations. Close your eyes. The geography awaits, rivers to cross, dreams to navigate, until morning calls you back, like Orpheus, like Persephone, like all who journey between worlds, temporary visitors to the geography of forever.